This episode of Popcorn Poops is brought to you by Audible.com. Please visit audibletrial.com/popcornpoops for a 30-day trial of their audiobook subscription service. When you sign up, you'll even receive a free audiobook that's yours to keep whether or not you continue with Audible after your trial has expired. That's audibletrial.com/popcornpoops for your free audiobook. We are the Popcorn Poops.
Welcome to Popcorn Poops, the best married couple movie podcast / commentary track hybrid audio program on the internet. My name is Jessica, and with me is my husband, Dustin.
Your Padawan learner, Dustin. Yes?
Yeah, definitely.
That's what you call me during sexy time.
No?
Right? No?
Is that what you want me to call you during sexy time?
Yes, all of the secrets are coming out.
That's really unfortunate.
That's the effect this film has had on my brain, is I have no good judgment anymore.
Our entire relationship has just changed.
That's a long relationship to change in just a moment. Maybe I've been influenced by the dark side, or the gray side of the Force.
The gray side? Yeah, I think so, definitely. As always, you can find us on our website at popcornpoops.com. Follow us on Twitter at popcornpoops, or individually, I'm at Jesse Casper.
And I'm at Dusty Cram.
Like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher, and if you want to donate to the show, then check out the GoFundMe page that's linked on our website. So this week, in celebration of the new Star Wars movie.
That's right. Star Wars The Force Awakens has come out at this point.
And we have definitely seen it.
We've seen it. I'm sure we'll say that at some point throughout the show. We already have, but I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit.
But in celebration of that, we're covering the worst that the franchise has to offer.
That's correct.
In what we are lovingly calling our hashtag Shitty Star Wars Month.
Hashtag Shitty Star Wars Month. Please put it on everything social media related.
And today we are hashtag Shitty Star Warsing it by watching Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
George Lucas's 1999 film.
So if you're going to sync the movie with us, please pause as soon as the text reading "A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away" completely fades to black. And while you're finding the sync spot, Dustin is going to read you a review that we received on iTunes.
That's right. This is a 5-star review that we received from Fur2, and this was on the Canadian iTunes store. Now, I've been asking people to submit reviews and things for a while, and I've been forgetting to check our international stores because, of course, our podcast is available worldwide, but in order to find those reviews, I have to individually go to each country's iTunes store and search for our podcast and look at the reviews, and it's not the most convenient thing to do. So this was actually submitted a few weeks ago, so we're kind of reading this out of order that we received it, which is not what we like to do, but such as it is. This is a 5-star review from Fur2 that reads, "Hello, been listening to you guys since your first episode. I love your podcast because I can listen to it without watching the movie in sync. You guys always keep me entertained and provide enough about what's going on to keep me in sync with where the movie is, but not bored. I may not, in fact, often not agree with you, but I'm still entertained. I also love the little tidbits of trivia you guys add in. Keep up the great show." And that's a great review because this person said in sync twice, and you're tearing up my heart.
Oh God!
When I'm with you, and when we are apart, I feel it too.
Really?
Sure.
That's where you went with that?
Yeah.
Thanks for the review. Sorry for my husband.
Yeah, if you want to leave us a review of your own, that would be wonderful. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher, and we will read it on the show, regardless of the star rating you give us. But
5 stars are pretty
five stars, please. 5 stars for 5-Star Wars. Although there's 7 now.
Yeah, good math there. So it's time to start the movie. Syncers, press play at the beep after the countdown. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
And we're off with Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
Yay!
All right, so confession here. When we say that we've been picking these movies this month, that I've picked the movies that I picked Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and you picked Caravan of Courage. I think Caravan of Courage is legitimately your pick.
Oh, that's legitimately my pick.
Legitimately your pick. But to be fair, we've kind of come together on this month of films and the ones that we've picked and curated for your listening pleasure. It's hard to say that you actually picked this movie.
Yeah, I mean, that is hard to say.
We kind of conferred
The blame
with
is sort of on both of us equally.
sort of on both of us. I think we conferred with one another, and what we wanted to do was bring you the worst prequel film. And there was some argument there about what that actually is. I think the consensus generally is that episode 2 is the worst of the prequels. But I have to disagree. I think The Phantom Menace is the worst of the prequels, if only because it is the most boring.
It is super boring.
And to use a word that I have misused not once, but twice now on this podcast, this is all right, I'm going to get it right this time, I swear to God, soporific. Because last week...
Why don't you just stick to your,
Because I don't know what the fuck
children's
I'm doing
dictionary
anymore. I don't know.
and-
That's right. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. The word is soporific. It is not sopophoric, as I said last week. And it's certainly not solipsistic. So one of these days, I'm going to learn how to speak my own fucking language. There we go.
Good try.
But that's what this movie is. This movie is boring.
Yeah.
Boring.
Well, and I mean, for me, I hate Teenage Annie so much.
Anakin. Let's
no.
Let's not
No, Sky Guy. Let's really
No. Let's not trade in the parlance of these films. Let's call him by his name. His name is Anakin Skywalker.
Sky Guy.
Okay then.
I hate the actor who plays him as a teenager.
Poor Hayden Christensen got a bad rap because the scripts were bad.
Right. I mean, I don't hate him. I say I hate him, and I don't hate him.
He's bad in the movies, but everyone's bad in the movies. George Lucas directs terrific actors to give terrible fucking performances.
But I hate that character so much. I hate the whiny, irritating teenage Anakin so much that the little kid Anakin is kind of not as bad to me.
I disagree with that because I think poor Jake Lloyd never meant to be an actor. I don't think he ever had it. He's got one style of delivery. He plays the same exact character with the same exact kind of rhythm and diction, and just it's the same performance as he does in the other, probably the second biggest film he was ever in, which was Jingle All the Way, with his co-stars Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sinbad.
Are you hating Jingle All the Way? Is that what this is? Do you hate that movie?
If we return to holiday films for next
If we
holiday
actually
season,
do holiday films during the holiday season.
we might have to do like a terrible holiday films month, and that's definitely...
My dad really likes that movie.
I used to really like that movie. There are some line deliveries in that movie that like give me like the nostalgia giggles, like "Put the cookie down now." That's great. I think that's pretty great, but only because I used to think it was great. That's not the case with Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and I have to admit, I was 12. I was 12 going on 13, I think. I think I was just about 13 because this came out in May of 1999. I was born in May of 86. So, yeah, 12 going on 13. And I thought this movie was the tits. Like, I really did. I was just like, oh, man, Star Wars is back.
I think I had a beach towel of it.
I had a couple of beach towels of it. I mean, if we're going to play the one-upsman game.
No, I don't want to one-ups you on Star Wars. You go ahead and own the prequels.
Some throw blankets. I had some action figures out the ass.
I think you had a Darth Maul throw blanket that you still had when we started dating.
Hey, it's hanging in the basement of my parents' house, and I haven't touched it in ages. It's probably got brown recluse spiders all over it. It's a death trap, much like this film that we're watching.
We have missed so much that I hate already.
No. I mean, that's the whole movie. We've missed so much that you hate, but we really haven't missed anything because nothing happens.
Well, let's talk about the text crawl right at the beginning there, and let's talk about the fact that there are 4 sentences and 4 adverbs right off the bat, which is just brilliant writing.
Would you like me to read the opening text?
Yeah, go ahead.
Turmoil has engulfed the... Oh, wait. How do they do it? How would they do it if this were an episode of the Clone Wars. Turmoil has engulfed the Galactic Republic. The taxation of trade routes to the outlying star systems is in dispute. Hoping to resolve the matter with a blockade of deadly battleships, the greedy Trade Federation has stopped all shipping to the small planet of Naboo. While the Congress of the Republic endlessly debates this alarming chain of events, the Supreme Chancellor has secretly dispatched 2 Jedi Knights, the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy, to settle the conflict.
I'm really happy you kept that up through the whole thing.
When I go cringe, I go full cringe.
So the title of the movie is The Phantom Menace, right? Mm-hmm. It's got to be the dumbest title for a movie maybe ever.
Yes.
Because, I mean, we're talking about some sort of menace. You would presume this movie was about some bad thing that was like incorporeal or something like that.
Like a ghost?
I mean, the like Phantom Menace?
The Phantom is not a literal phantom.
Whatever. Like it's the word
it's
phantom.
It's not a spook, specter, or ghost. There's no intergalactic Ghostbusters to whom which we would call.
I mean, a better title for this movie would be An Inconsequential Skirmish Over the Taxation of Some Minor Trade Route No One Knows About.
Yes.
Because, I mean, pretty much like right at the beginning, we know, like our text crawl tells us this movie is going to be about the taxation of trade routes. Like a disagreement about the taxation of
what excitement, what
routes.
Adventure.
And about some problems with their Senate.
I mean, that's the number one problem with this movie. You read that opening. I don't know why people reading the opening crawl didn't immediately go, What? What is this movie about?
This is about what?
What? So, the opening of this movie, the opening shot of this movie, I feel like every Star Wars film, its opening shot is important. It kind of sets the mood for the entire movie. And the opening shot of this movie always gives me false hope because I still think the ship design of the ship that they fly in on really looks like Star Wars. It looks like a Star Wars ship. And the Trade Federation donut-looking space station looks like Star Wars to me.
There are some moments in this movie of where you're watching it and you kind of go, "Oh my God, Star Wars!
Is that Star Wars?
What is this?
Is that you? Is that you, Star Wars? Is that you?"
And then, Jar Jar steps into some poop or something, and you're like, well, never mind.
So fast. It goes south so fast. Now,
Oh, right here. She's talking to the Trade Federation, who we've got the Queen Amidala, right? And she's talking to the Trade Federation on their ship about the blockade. And she's talking about the ambassadors that the Senate has sent and how she knows they're already there and whatever. Number one, she has no reaction when they tell her they don't know anything about the ambassador, even though she just told them that she knows that they already arrived.
We know that you guys are here, so...
But the other thing is that the text crawl specifically said that the Chancellor secretly, that was one of their 4 adverbs. Secretly dispatched the Jedi. So why the fuck does she know about it?
Why does she know that the Jedi are there? She references them specifically.
Why does she secretly get this information, but the Trade Federation doesn't? Are the Jedi on on Naboo's side? They're not supposed to be.
I mean, she shouldn't. Yeah, I mean, she shouldn't know about that. But I mean, that's just one of many little details that George Lucas forgets while writing this movie. And he forgets what people know and don't know throughout this movie.
He also forgets what they're saying, like the moment that they say it, because like one of the first lines is, "I have a bad feeling about this," and of course I'm going, "Me too."
Me too. You've only said it in every fucking Star Wars, as though that's like a line that people quote, like, "I'm a Star Wars geek. I have a bad feeling about this." No one fucking says that, George Lucas. Stop it.
No, we don't.
And they say it in The Force Awakens. And it's the worst moment. Probably the worst moment.
It's the worst moment in the
Probably for me, it's the worst moment. That's what I rolled my eyes the hardest at. But then I went back to laughing and giggling and crying simultaneously in the very next moment.
Some of Harrison Ford's acting in that movie was the worst moment for me.
Yeah, let's save it.
Okay.
Let's save it.
Anyways, so I have, and let's not get off on a wrong foot here. I love The Force Awakens, so
I very much enjoyed it.
Very much loved it.
Yes.
But anyways, so I have a bad feeling about this, right? And then immediately, Qui-Gon goes, "I don't feel anything." And then, as though like, going back on his statement really fast, Obi-Wan's like, "It's something elsewhere." And you're like, "No, you said this."
I think it was like Obi-Wan trying to pretend like he felt something in the Force to be like cool, or he's like, "Oh, I'm tapped in.
Man,
I know what's up."
I have a bad feeling about this. And then kind of looking at him.
And his master's like,
"What?
No, I don't think so." And Obi-Wan's like, "Oh, I mean, like not about
here.
this. Like this other. I mean,
like another.
I was feeling this other thing. I'm sorry. It's
you taste a dish and you're like, "Oh, do I detect a hint of sage?" And then someone's like, "No, actually, oh no, not sage. I meant
not sage. I meant coriander. The coriander. Paprika. No." Yeah.
But no, really the reality is that George Lucas forgot like what was being said right there.
He just forgot the last line.
He said this. He said, "I have a bad feeling about this."
It's like, George, that scroll wheel on your mouse.
Do we know what this
push
means?
that up and you can see what you wrote before.
Yeah, the line before it comes back.
That'll help you with the context for the next thing that comes.
Usually
George.
the lines should be connected, in dialogue. Like
Sure.
people should respond to each other when they say things.
You're right. I mean, this, for a movie that's so boring, it does kind of move along. So I want to get through some things that some notes I had on the beginning part of this movie where they're on the Trade Federation station. I think it's a really incredibly boring way to start your trilogy because within the first couple of minutes, we have a couple of Jedi. The first Jedi we've seen other than Obi-Wan and Luke, we're talking about, Qui-Gon Jinn, played by Liam Neeson, who I think looks great. Looks like a Jedi
Qui-Gon?
Master. Yes, I think Qui-Gon
yeah.
looks great. I think his performance is
I actually like Qui-Gon.
as
I
good
think
as
he's the most like salvageable thing from this movie.
Sure. Sure, I would probably agree with that. Like as a character, yeah, I think so. Because he's kind of wise. You can like describe him
But
and say
he's
that
kind of like subversive and stuff too. He's kind of going against the council.
That's true.
And doing some interesting
That's true.
stuff.
He's kind of rebellious. I do agree with that. And he does probably deliver the best performance.
Yeah.
In the movie, even though his performance still isn't that great. Nobody comes off good in this movie, I don't think. But yeah, within the first couple of minutes, we have Jedi sitting down and drinking fucking tea in a waiting room. Just in the first couple of minutes, it's like, okay, why not take a page out of your own book, George? Do you remember how episode 4 started, where it's just like, bam, a ship is getting boarded, explosions, people shooting lasers, motherfuckers are dying, and Darth motherfucking Vader walks in and he's like, clean this ship out, yo. Why not do something? Now, I'm not saying that you have to copy that, The Force Awakens. I'm saying that you can, start your movie off with a bang, please. We haven't seen Star Wars when this came out. We hadn't seen a Star Wars movie in 16 years, and he starts out, "Oh, he's a Jedi drinking tea.
I'm gonna have some tea." Oh, hey, that happens in Clone Wars in the movie. You remember? He sits down.
Maybe he was like,
Obi-Wan sits down and has some tea.
I did say that when the Jedi Knights were around, it was a more civilized age. Maybe they can just drink some tea in the opening scene. Would that be good?
And then poison gas fills the room, and I guess they just hold their breath.
I guess so, even though they have a device on them that apparently allows them to breathe underwater.
Which we just
saw them use. They're now in the Gungan city of...
It's the A99
city.
Aquata breather.
No.
Yes.
We're not going to do that, are we?
Or the Jedi breathing device.
Oh, there we go. That's it. That's the one. Okay. Nicely done.
But I mean, like, for me, like, they just pulled out those breathing devices to get down here to the Gungan city, and I'm just like, where are they keeping those things? Like, they don't carry, bags or anything with them. They've just got their robes on, and their lightsabers, and they're tucking them somewhere up in there.
Oh, don't, what?
And I'm just like, how do they just have this tool right now? Like, right now they're just gonna have it with them because suddenly in this instance they need it. So I guess maybe they could have used that in the poison room, but they don't show us that they used that in the poison room, so we're just left to presume that they held their breath.
I mean, either which way, like, once you find out that they have them on them, there's I mean, it's kind of dumb. And the fact that they just open up the doors almost immediately after the poison gas fills the room.
Wait a minute longer, maybe.
Yeah, it's like, you can hold your breath. How long can you hold your breath for? We'll make it like twice I mean, they're Jedi, so make it like, I don't know, 10 times that long.
I mean, just
Why don't
keep
you
them
wait?
in there.
Yeah. Overnight. Fuck it.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, you're killing them anyways, so.
Yeah, they're dead. Clean out the room
You
in
don't
the morning.
have security cameras? You can't,
Not
like,
big.
look in there when the smoke clears?
Right? But no. This cool things this movie did give us. What it looks like when a lightsaber cuts through a big heavy metal door with like the molten metal, and that's cool, right?
Yeah.
I liked that. Let's talk about the Nemoidians, the Trade Federation bros, Viceroy Newt Gunray and his buddy.
Oh, and their fantastic accents.
Oh my god! Apparently, like in visuals, like the fact that they're part of the Trade Federation, they're the leaders of the Trade Federation, or at least Newt Gunray is. The dress, the garb that they're wearing, allegedly had something to do with, like, it was inspired by designs of ancient Chinese mercantile something or other.
Oh, so that's why we gave them racist Asian accents.
Yep, that's all I could think was that. Oh, okay, George, you were going for like old style Chinese merchants, and you just went full on yellowface. Like,
Yeah.
seriously screwed the pooch on that one. And that's one of those things that originally they were supposed to speak a different language and be subtitled, but because their part in the movie was so vital that they didn't want to screw it up with awkward subtitles or something like that. And in one of the, I think there's several fan edits of this. One of the things that's pretty consistent across all of the fan edits, they garble, they scramble what they're saying, and they subtitle it as though they're speaking another language, as they do with this monstrosity that we're seeing right now on our screen. Fucking Jar Jar Binks. Here, look at him.
I don't want to look at him.
Look at him and look how terrible this CGI has aged.
I really don't want to look at him.
He looks so bad.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm not just saying that because everyone hates the character. You should hate the character. He's a dumb character. He's the sole source of quote unquote comedy in this movie, therefore rendering the movie entirely humorless. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's, I mean, it's the last Star Wars movie that I watched as of watching this last night was The Force Awakens, which is really fucking hard to do, considering that The Force Awakens is, and someone can argue with me, and they probably will, it's the funniest Star Wars movie.
Oh yeah, there were some great moments.
It's got the best jokes. Mm-hmm. I think
physical jokes and stuff too, not just in dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something this movie absolutely fails at, because they put it completely on the shoulders of Jar Jar Binks, and that's a character that does not fucking work. He doesn't work because he's so irritating, and also, let's go right back to it, kind of racist.
Yeah.
Jar Jar and the Gungans in general are kind of this, like, African stereotype, like in their accent and the way they like, I don't know, change words and things like that, and the accents in general. It's really troubling, and I think that's a harder one to pin down. I think the Nemoidians, the guys that we're looking at right now,
it's really obvious.
It's really obvious. I think that's a harder pin on the Gungans, but I don't know, man. Like, it just makes me really uncomfortable to listen to him talk.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's super. I mean, everything he says is super, super cringy. Why do they lose power right here? What is this? Why did they just suddenly lose power?
Well, you see, there's this thing in movies called, like, tension, and what happens when they lose power is the tension builds, and then Obi-Wan can hotwire it, because there's a type of power loss that you can just hotwire back to life, and then when he does that, there's a big fish in front of him, and that's
then we go,
scary.
oh,
and
big
wow,
fish,
tension
scary.
release, movie magic.
Like, I get that the ship was bit by one of the fish, and so maybe the power loss is because of that.
It leaked out. All the power leaked out of the hole that the fish bit in the ship.
Okay.
That's what
you know,
happened.
the only time it just happens suddenly, just so that we can turn off the lights for a second, so that we can turn on the lights and see another fish.
Look at the designs of these underwater monsters. They look like they belong in fucking Finding Nemo or something.
Like, and
they're so cartoony.
They're super cartoony, and we just did the same joke twice. We just did there's always a bigger fish joke 2 times, because we had a large fish bite the ship and then get eaten. And then we just had a large fish chase the ship and then get eaten, by a bigger fish.
It's hard to watch
same
this.
Thing twice in
It's
a row.
hard to watch this and know that this is how clever and witty George Lucas thinks he is. And that's hard.
It's really sad.
It is really sad.
Look what she's wearing right now. And then in 5, and are those the lights attached to the bottom of her dress? That was kind of funky.
They are actually, and they were apparently powered by a car battery.
The lights attached to the bottom of her dress?
Yes, I read that.
That is excessive.
That seems excessive, doesn't it? We live in the age of LEDs and stuff now, so... And not that there weren't LEDs back then, but that does seem excessive. I did read that somewhere, that there's a car battery under that dress.
That sucks for her.
Yes.
Anyways, I wanted to mention that dress because in 5 seconds we're going to see her again, and she's going to be right here, and she's in black morning clothes. And they had already said they had captured her. So I'm so she has time to go change into this other extremely elaborate outfit during the time that she's captured,
yes,
so that she can be in morning clothes now?
Priorities. Is that what it's supposed to be, as morning clothes? Is that
that's what it looks like to me.
Is that what you interpret it as?
I interpret it as she's wearing all black now during the time that she's captured, and that's the only time we see her wearing all black.
Here's one thing at which the movie succeeds, I think, kind of incredibly. There are no special effects used used for any kind of trickery of the eye, as far as Padme and her double. There's a decoy. None of that. There are no special effects to assist with that. Sometimes it's Natalie Portman in the Queen garb, and sometimes it's Keira Knightley. Mm-hmm. Apparently, in this black outfit right here, this is actually Keira Knightley, and Natalie Portman is one of the handmaidens. And there are a couple of other scenes where it's also Natalie Portman in the Queen garb, and Natalie Portman is... did I say Natalie Portman? Keira Knightley in the Queen garb, and Natalie Portman as the handmaiden.
Well, and that just goes to show you that, makeup can go a long way. Makeup and clothing.
There are apparently whole web pages dedicated to trying to parse out where Keira Knightley is and where Natalie Portman is in this movie, because they hid them both so well between the two roles.
Yeah.
And I think that's...
And I don't think they look particularly a lot alike either. they have the same build.
The makeup helps. Yeah, I think so. But the makeup helps, of course. But I think it's kind of amazing that,
Oh, all those Superman haters, right? Joking about the glasses. But, sometimes you do simple things.
I have a couple of Superman references in my notes. Did you?
That's weird.
Did you read my notes?
No.
One of them... One of my notes has to do with the extra powers that the Jedi have in this, Jedi super speed that we see at the beginning, where Qui-Gon's like, "Let's go," pew, and they run away, and it looks similar to the fast running effect in True Blood, which looks like shit, and Jedi super jumping, which I guess you could argue was kind of in the original trilogy. There were a couple of questionable jumps that Jedi had to make. But yeah, which, the added Jedi Force powers make this kind of like the Superman 2 of Star Wars movies.
So she just had a scene where I wanted to talk about this. So right now, it's her decoy is in the Queen outfit, and the real Queen is standing beside her as a handmaiden.
Yes.
And the decoy is the one who makes all the important decisions.
At least that one.
At least that one, because... right now, she had the choice to either go convince the Senate that the Trade Federation are dicks, or stay with her people in the captivity of the Trade Federation.
Right.
Who said they were going to make her people suffer. And for a minute, she's like, I need to stay here with my people. It's the captain going down with the ship thing, right?
Right, of course.
And that's a serious decision to make.
Definitely.
And the decoy turns to the real Queen and kind of looks at her and is like, either choice is dangerous. And the real Queen says, "We are brave."
That's it.
And that's all she says.
Okay.
And then the decoy says she'll go to the Senate. she made the choice about which one she was gonna do.
And here's the problem with here's the real, I mean, that's a problem in and of itself, but the real problem is the missed opportunity of how you can set up the fact that there is a decoy and a real queen, and how they might communicate with one another in situations where they can't openly reveal which is the decoy and which is the queen. So the decoy, dressed as the queen, has to make a serious decision, but can't make the decision on her own because she's not the fucking queen. So she turns to the queen dressed as a handmaiden and says something to her, and the handmaiden says something back, and the queen says, I agree with my handmaiden. That's what, we're going to do.
Right. The handmaiden offers advice
The
or
handmaiden
says
offers
something
advice,
like that.
the queen agrees with it, and no one is, any the wiser about what has just happened. That's smart. That's clever writing.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, George Lucas walks right up to this clever moment and then trips over it and farts and pees on himself. That's what happens in that moment.
Oh my God. Yeah, right? Like, and so instead we have this really weird situation where it's like, okay, if she's got this decoy doing this shit all the time, like, how often is the decoy making decisions for her? Making important decisions for her? There's another weird thing that's going to come up here after this scene. So we just saw R2, or we're about to see R2, or did he already do it?
Yeah, he already fixed it.
He already did? Okay, so we
it.
saw R2's intro, right? Which I think is kind of
I think it's fine.
Cool little intro.
This is
I
where
think
R2
it's really
came
convenient that he's on this ship with them.
He's in the service of the queen. He's from Naboo, I guess. I don't know if he was built there, but that's where we get introduced to him for the first time in any of the movies. That's where we know that he's come from at this point. And there's a group of droids on the ship when their shields get knocked out, and all of the droids except for R2 get blown off the side of the ship, and it's up to R2 to fix it, and he does, and he fixes it. And that's where R2-D2 comes from, and he's the sole survivor of the escape from Naboo in the service of the queen. Fine intro for that robot.
Yeah, it's
totally
fine. Again, like I said, I think it's really convenient that he just so happens to be on the... Like, it makes so much more sense to me that R2 and C-3PO were just in Leia's service. Like, that makes so much more sense to me. That they were just a part of, they were her family's droids or something, part of the resistance. Like... Yeah. That's their origin, and that's it.
Yeah, that R2 got passed along with Leia to Bail Organa when, he adopted her and, ended up on her ship. I mean, otherwise, you have to think of it in that way, and it already is this way, to be honest, but you have to think of Star Wars as the most convenient.
Well, that's what
universe.
I'm saying, is that I have no need. I get the wanting to have R2-D2 and C-3PO in these 3 movies because money. But
toys.
But I'm just like, I don't need them here logically. It makes me believe it less because they are here.
Okay, so here's the question. She is thanking R2-D2 right now in a formal fashion, I think. Is it stupid, or does it make sense for the queen to thank R2-D2?
Is it stupid, or does it? Well, I mean, both, I guess.
We talked about this last night, and I think it's a good point to bring up, because I think that there is a criticism here, and people have mentioned it before, that it's stupid that the queen would thank a robot for doing its job.
Okay. So what I think is stupid is I think it's stupid that we're having like a commemoration ceremony for R2-D2.
With the Jedi kind of standing at attention in the background a little bit.
Right, and the droid being brought before the queen.
There's some formality to it, there feels.
That's stupid. Because it is just a robot doing the job that it was programmed to do. But also I understand that robots, and please take note that Padme is cleaning R2-D2, which she was told to do by the queen, because I'm going to complain about this in a second. But,
right.
But I understand that the robots in this world are sentient to some degree.
Right. They
have emotions. I mean, that's half of the humor in the original trilogy is R2D2 getting pissed off or or upset or scared.
And C-3PO and the same. I mean, R2D2 doesn't have any lines in English, but he clearly emotes with his bleeps and bloops.
I mean, some of the funniest things from the original trilogy are lines that R2D2 says, but we don't understand, and C-3PO just responds to.
C-3PO is very clearly self-aware, so they've developed artificial intelligence in this universe. So with that said, is the humane thing to do to thank a robot for its service that you've built because you've built it to be sentient and self-aware?
And I'm sure that can be determined by like the kind of person you are, the kind of character you are.
Sure.
That's a great way to deliver characterization.
Absolutely.
Is to show how they treat robots. Are they the kind of person that looks at a robot and is just like, this is a toaster and I'm not going to thank my toaster? Like, for instance, Luke's dad, right? Or his uncle. You know, I would suspect he'd be the kind of person that probably wouldn't get too sappy with the robots.
No. Yeah, and you get that feeling. Yeah.
Luke's the kind of guy who...
In that scene in episode 4 when he's buying R2-D2 and C-3PO from the Jawas, yeah, you definitely get that feeling that he's buying machines.
And Luke's kind of in the middle at the beginning. He's sort of like, you know, kind of belittles them a little bit, but at the same time converses with them. And then later there's definitely an emotional attachment.
I mean, by the end of that movie, you know, when he gets into the X-Wing before the Battle of Yavin, he asks R2 like how he's doing, if he's ready for this, and R2 bleeps and bloops, and he says good. He's, you know, there's a concern there for R2's well-being, whereas before it was just, you know, I've got to clean these droids because they have to do work, and that's all I really care about.
So, anyways, you can tell a lot. I think you can get a lot of characterization with the way people treat droids, but that scene would have delivered a lot more characterization and made a lot more sense to me if instead of having this big ceremonial, you know, presentation of R2-D2, that we just like had the Queen walk by the room where the droids are serviced and had her, you know, kind of say thank you to the droid. Oh, is this, I came to see the little droid. Is this the one who helped us? Thank you, little droid. Like, whatever. Not this big formal presentation. I expect the guy who's working on the droids to be really emotional about it. Whatever. The other thing about that scene that really bothers me is that the Queen, decoy Queen, tells Padme to go clean the droid.
It's like, no, in that situation, you tell another handmaiden to go clean the droid. If you tell any of them at all, you know, I would assume that you would give someone else that job. Actually, we talked about the possibility of there being a character on board the ship that gets a little characterization because they have a relationship with the robots. And they
Right, yeah, that's what I was talking about, like someone who services the droid
exactly,
or something.
and they're really close to the robots, and when R2-D2 comes back, you know, they're the ones that are responsible for cleaning them up and thanking them, and that kind of stuff.
But she goes and gets Padme to do, and she tells Padme, she's like, go clean this little droid. And I'm like, whoa, what? Huh? What? That's the fucking Queen. Like, was there some indiscretion behind closed doors between you two? Because this is not gonna end well for you, decoy. Like, this does not end well.
I just want to see
you.
a scene where Padme and the decoy are in a room together after that alone, and Padme's like, bitch.
I mean, I understand that Padme is the kind of character that would clean a droid to thank it. Sure. I understand that.
Yes.
But what person would presume to tell the Queen to go do something like that?
It's a stupid moment in hindsight. But then again, it's like George Lucas wrote one draft of this and he was like, it's done. My masterpiece. Because you go back through it again and you're like, oh, wait, this doesn't really make sense because we've revealed later that the Queen has a decoy. Okay. Anyway. They are currently on Tatooine because this movie just wants to waste about 45 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Just throw it right down the fucking garbage disposal.
Let's just throw it away.
So what's happening here is that their ship got messed up and they need a hyperdrive, something. It's always about the hyperdrive. They got to get parts for their ship. So they're going into town, which is not Mos Eisley, it's Mos Espa, which looks identical to Mos Eisley on Tatooine because it's a Star Wars movie, and what's a Star Wars movie without returning to the most isolated, out-of-the-way fucking planet in all the galaxy?
Yeah, of course. I do love her hair on this planet. I think it's really pretty.
It's much more sensible than
than the stupid queen hair that she has when she's in costume all the time.
Yes. So on Tatooine, she convinces, or she doesn't convince, she basically says that the queen demands that her handmaiden go with Qui-Gon to get parts in town. And he also takes Jar Jar and R2. And to me, at this point, it's like, what kind of shitty Jedi Knight can't sense that Padme is the queen herself?
Right.
And,
I mean, I assume that they must know before they know.
Yeah, maybe. And there's a moment in the movie later where it's revealed, like the big reveal of like, actually, I'm the queen.
Yeah, and I thought it was kind of a crappy reveal.
It's very crappy. And she just steps out from behind and she's like, hey.
Because we're going to talk to the Gungans now. Like, that's a good enough reason to do it. Like, you trust your decoy to decide whether or not you stay behind to die with your people, but you don't trust her to, talk to some Gungans.
Yeah, but when she does that, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon kind of share a glance and a smile with one another, as though it's like, oh, we knew the whole time. And maybe they do know, and this whole thing with Qui-Gon,
just fucking with her?
Yeah, and Qui-Gon's telling her, like, the queen doesn't have to know, and I'm going to do what I fucking want to, and I'm telling the queen to her face, and I know it.
I think he's probably just fucking with her.
Yeah, maybe if they had a little more direction, that could come across a little bit easier.
That would help.
We wouldn't have to speculate about that, but
So we missed one.
What's a movie without having to work for it?
We missed one of my favorite lines and scenes, interactions in the movie, and that was when little Annie and and Padme meet, and he says, "Are you an angel? I heard the deep space pilots talk about them. They're the most beautiful creatures in the universe. They live on the moons of Yago, I think."
So the reference to angels, which goes right alongside the references to hell in previous Star Wars films, proving that the Judeo-Christian God oversees this galaxy too.
Apparently.
He does.
I mean, the only thing we're supposed to go to there is, the Abrahamic definition of what an angel is, that he's saying she's, like an angel, she's beautiful, and he's gonna save him and whatever.
Right.
But then, like, apparently the Clone Wars TV show tried to, go back and explain it, and there's an episode where they go to Yago, and the angels are also called Diatham or something.
What show is this in?
The Clone Wars.
Oh, okay. And what do they look like?
Diatham. I don't know how to say it. Diatham.
Diatham. Dia probably from the Latin root for like God.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyways, though, yeah, they go, and apparently these angels live on Yago and also its biggest moon, and they appear differently to different people depending on the person.
Okay.
And they also have hypnotic abilities and can fly in space without a spacesuit.
I'm gonna be honest. This sounds like a Pokemon I know. But keep going.
When the angel appears to Anakin, she looks like a young, pretty woman with wings.
My goodness, these are nice digs for a slave.
Right? They really are. I mean, this apartment is way bigger than our apartment.
No shit. And we're not slaves. Well, not,
I mean, slave to the system.
Not like in the traditional sense. We're not slaves, but
and anyways, though, the last thing I wanted to say about angels is that the voice actress who voices the angel that Anakin meets in the show is also the voice actress who voices Padme in the show, which I'm sure was a callback to this wonderful line.
Or maybe just
dialogue.
A really economical way to pay one actress to a couple of roles.
Sure.
I mean, that's voice actors. That's what they do. Have you ever seen like the voice acting cast list for a show? It's like this person plays 14 characters.
Oh yeah, and in a listicle about all the horrible things in this movie, one guy said he would have preferred, instead of the "Are you an angel" line, he would have preferred the line "You make my ding dong feel funny," and and I agree.
Oh my God. Awesome. Yeah, so let's talk about how weird this is.
Are we going to talk about his ding dong feeling funny?
Sure.
Let's talk about
Padme
that.
is supposed to be 13 or 14, and Anakin is supposed to be 9 or 10 when they meet.
Mm-hmm.
Natalie Portman was 17 when they shot this, and Jake Lloyd was 9. So Jake Lloyd was actually the age that Anakin is supposed to be. Natalie Portman was some at 4 or 5 years, something like 4 years older than that, which is a huge difference. A huge difference.
Oh, yeah.
And to me, when I look at Anakin, I see a prepubescent boy.
He's a little boy.
He's a little boy. When I see Padme, I see a post-pubescent young woman.
Right. Yeah.
Clearly.
Yes.
How am I supposed to believe that this is going to be anything but Anakin's first masturbation experience?
I mean, like, the whole time they have that first conversation, and I hate every interaction between Anakin and Padme, but, like, during that first conversation, all I'm doing is sitting there thinking, as you talk to this small child, think about his penis, because it's going to be inside of you.
Oh, no. No.
I hate their relationship so much because, I mean, even if they were played by people that were actually more age appropriate to the characters' ages, when I was a 14-year-old girl, 9-year-old boys were babies.
Yeah.
I babysat them.
Yes, of course.
And the thing is that this is not a normal 14-year-old girl. This is not even your regular normal 14-year-old girl who would be disgusted and think that he's a little baby.
No, she's elected royalty.
She's so mature and intelligent and wise for her age that she was elected to rule a planet.
At age 14.
At age, well, maybe even younger than that. We don't know how long she's been in
queen.
power.
That's true. Which brings me to another thing. Queens aren't elected. I mean, okay. I want to put this out there. You said this last night, and I agree with it. You can call your elected leader whatever you want to. There was even a discussion in the early stages of developing this country, of building this country that we live in, the United States of America,
about calling the president king,
about
or
whether or not to call the president of the country king, an elected king. So it's not like it's impossible or anything like that. The problem that I have with it is that a 14-year-old queen denotes something very specific, and that is a hierarchical, a hereditary, a royal family where someone died and she became the head of the country, or the head of the planet in this case, way too fucking young.
And that happens. You know, that's something that historically, even the real world, we've seen many, many, many times throughout history where enough people die at the right moment that it winds up that a kid gets on the fucking throne.
Right.
And that's a way more interesting story because then you're talking about someone having to deal with pressures and stuff that they're not ready to deal with yet.
Yes.
And it would, you know, even make the fucked up weird relationship that she has with Anakin anyways a little more bearable because it's again like this weird, you know, juxtaposition of like maturity and immaturity and whatever. Sure. Right? But no, that's not what we have.
Which I do think is what Lucas was kind of going for. Ultimately, is that she is very put together, she's a politician, she leads a very serious life, very buttoned up, and Anakin is a wild card.
I don't understand why she has to be queen. Why can't she just be fucking princess or something? I
don't know.
Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Because you got to upgrade. We had a princess in the last one.
A 14-year-old to this position.
We had a princess in the last one. You got to upgrade.
There's no logic to. You said something about who would elect her.
Well, I mean, my theory is that on Naboo, there isn't a minimum voting age. There's a maximum voting age, and it's 12.
Right.
So only tweens can vote for the queen, and their basis of like their platform that they vote for. They say, well, I mean, she grew boobs over the summer, so
she did. She's definitely got her period.
She's definitely got her period. She's definitely supposed to be the queen. Like, she's got to be the queen. There's no one else who can be.
Yeah,
like, really.
That's true. I mean, I know other fantasy and science fiction that I love that has had really young people elected to positions of extreme authority that seems unbelievable, you know?
Right.
I'm not going to name stuff to spoil things, but there are some pretty obvious ones out there where kids are in positions of extreme authority that they have been elected to.
I mean, if you haven't watched Game of Thrones, then that's on you. But that's a big thing.
I mean, that's what I was.
I know it was.
But But anyways, like, they were dire situations. When that happens in stories in fiction, it's always a dire situation. It's always like there really is nobody better, and you believe that there's nobody better. But this is not a situation where I believe that. It's a peaceful planet. Like, what kind of situation is there where you only have a 14-year-old?
Moving on from that, because I think we made our point. Speaking of the planet is called Naboo. When you refer to things from Naboo, most specifically the ship that they have, they refer to it, Watto does, as Nubian.
Yeah, that makes lots of sense.
As in the African ethnic group?
Right, of the area that's, what is it, northern Sudan?
Yes, and Egypt, parts of Egypt.
Southern Egypt.
George, read a book. Please read a book. In it, you'll learn things like queens aren't elected and Nubian refers to an ethnic group in Africa. Those are some amazing things that you'll read in the world of books. That really bothers me. And we mentioned we invoked Watto. Invoked. Let's talk about Watto.
Let's talk about this Toydarian. Whatever.
I mean, toy is in the name of his species. Like he was designed to be a little action figure.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally true. And mind tricks don't work on him. He says it explicitly.
The only thing that works is the money. Because
Hutts also have this resistance, if you recall.
Yes.
Hutts do kind of resist the Force too, right?
Yes, only sleaze bags
can do
it. But Watto is very, very clear, and back to the weird, blatant racism in this movie. He's really obviously like this kind of Italian Jewish stereotype with his accent, and he's got like this huge nose and talking about like only money works on me.
Well, that's the only way that George Lucas can come up with alien creatures is he just picks a group of people who are not like him. So, they have a different color, I don't know, skin.
Oh my God!
Maybe they're from like a different place, like another country.
There's a moment coming up, and I'm gonna try not to get ahead of it. I mean, we fall behind all the time, but jumping ahead a little bit, right before the pod race, Qui-Gon refers to Watto as my blue friend, and I'm just wondering if that's how George refers to all of his friends. He just says my insert skin color friend here, and that's just how he refers to everybody. Because I mean, that makes the most sense to me.
That makes sense to me too.
In George Lucas's world, in Skywalker Ranch, they refer to everyone by the color of their skin.
Well, when he says alien, he's thinking like foreigner, right?
Right.
Like alien is also that's why we say it.
Different than George Lucas. Different than me. Right. Yeah. So.
Oh, okay. So this little Greedo right here.
It's not Greedo. It's a Rhodian, and his name is Wald.
I read that he actually is Greedo. I read that in an original version of this script, they actually had a reference to Greedo and stuff.
In the original script, what I read was that there was a scene in which Anakin was supposed to wrestle a young Greedo. But in this version of the movie, the character's name is supposedly Wald, played by Warwick Davis, of course, who played Wicket, who also appears in the spectators, in the crowd, in the pod race, and he's somewhere else in the movie too. He's credited as 3 things in this. But yes, Warwick Davis returns to play the little Rhodian creature named Wald. But yes, you see that alien pop up a few times. There's another one that's in the stands because what Star Wars used to be was, hey, let's think of something new and interesting, and that's what we're going to continue to do is just expand and do weirder, cooler things. And then at some point it started folding back on itself, and people were like, oh yeah, I remember that thing from Star Wars. And George Lucas was like, hey, do you remember this thing from Star Wars? And everyone's like, yeah, I remember that. And then the universe just it's just a circle. That's all it does is it goes back. It started something new, and then just folds back on itself. This movie is just a big
bad reference.
Yeah.
Look, we've got a new creature. We've got Jar Jar.
Okay. Let me put this out there. After seeing The Force Awakens, and this is probably my biggest criticism of the movie as a whole, the biggest criticism of The Force Awakens, is that it borrows way too much from the original trilogy. Way too much. Watching that whole movie, it like all of the set pieces and stuff, more than once I sat there thinking, man, this feels really familiar. This is really familiar territory, and not in the way that it should be, where it's like, yes, we've returned to this universe, we've returned to these characters, and we're seeing new adventures. It's more like we're seeing new characters and the same old adventures. What's going on? There's another Death Star, and
well, I mean, that's what we do.
Complete with another trench run. It's
right, yeah.
So it's just the original trilogy kind of remixed, rehashed, and turned into a new movie.
But I mean, my whole explanation for that is that you have to appease the geek gods. If you want your Star Wars franchise to continue and you want people to be into it and you want to be able to afford to continue to make decent movies,
that's one way to do it.
Then you get what? You're going to go through and you're not going to appease the geek gods?
It's not about appeasing. What is the geek gods?
The geek gods are, you have to get the approval of all the people. If you don't put your Han Solo in there, then no one's going to buy that she's going to, well, I would.
It's not about that.
Most people.
I know that. I'm not talking about that, and I'm not arguing. I'm saying that there are many ways to do this. My criticism is that, and I'm not saying that it couldn't do it at all. I'm just saying that I think The Force Awakens does it a little too much.
No, I think it does it too much too, but...
That said, after seeing The Force Awakens, I had more respect for this movie, for the original trilogy. Not that I like it anymore. In fact, I probably like it less because of how well written the dialogue and the characters and stuff are in The Force Awakens, most of them anyway. Coming back to this, it's even harder to watch. This was a very, very hard watch for me after seeing The Force Awakens, but it made me realize that this movie does new shit. This doesn't feel like a rehash of any of the other Star Wars movies. Episode 2 doesn't feel like a rehash of any of the other Star Wars movies. Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3, doesn't feel like a rehash of any of the other Star Wars movies.
Yeah, it did new shit, but it did it poorly. So.
Exactly. Agreed. I'm not saying I like this movie more. I'm saying I respect these movies more.
I believe that the new movies are going to do new shit. I think they just had to get this one out of the way. I think they had to get this one out of the way that went back and had, all the same fucking characters and just did a bunch of the same shit. And I mean, we had the exact same plot as, basically the other movies. Like, you just go and blow up a Death Star. Like, that's what we're doing. So, right. I get that we had to do that to appease people so that we could restart this franchise. You say that we had to do that. I'm saying that that is one way to do it.
I
think that's the safest way to do it.
Absolutely, and that's what I said. The movie is safe. It's very safe. It is a safe Star Wars movie, and my hope is that they go from here and they do weird stuff.
And now they do what they want to do. That's what I'm saying. That's what I think is going to happen. I think that they did this because they had to, or they felt like they had to, and then the next time they're going to just, do something crazy. That's my hope. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's what I hope too. I mean, Episode 8, directed by Rian Johnson, who wrote and directed Brick and The Brothers Bloom. He's done Looper, weird, small indie stuff. Real smart guy, making really interesting movies. They get him to make Episode 8. I think that they've set themselves up for an empire. I think that that's what they've done, is they've made a safe Star Wars movie to bring the franchise back. They brought an interesting filmmaker on to write and direct the second installment of this new trilogy, and it's going to be weird. It's going to go weird places. That was something that amazed me about watching Empire, revisiting Empire before The Force Awakens last week, was how weird it is. How many different places it goes.
But you have to understand, Dustin. I mean, think about how much backlash these prequels have gotten. How much people hate them. How much shit is talked about them constantly.
Right.
Like, you Google Episode 1 and like the first 50 things are going to be listicles about why it sucks. Like, people hate these movies, or at least, it's fashionable to hate these movies, right? Like, that's the territory it's gone into, is that it's fashionable to hate these movies. They are bad.
But they're bad movies.
They deserve it.
but
it's fashionable to hate them now, right?
Yes.
And that's how bad it's gotten. So, and where did that stem from? Where did that start from? It started from the fans not being satisfied with these films.
Right. Well, what I was saying was that I think that they've set themselves up to basically copy the original trilogy in that they've basically remade A New Hope. They've got
And now they're going to do a weird Empire. I get what you're saying.
and they're going to do a weird movie for Empire based on the director that they've tapped for it, and then the director that they've tapped for Episode 9, which would be this new trilogy's Return of the Jedi, is Colin Trevorrow, the guy who made Jurassic fucking World. It's going to be the same thing. They're going to make a weird second installment, and then they're going to make a third installment that's just, hey, remember Star Wars? Isn't Star Wars great? Because that's what Colin Trevorrow did with Jurassic World. That whole fucking movie was, hey, do you remember Jurassic Park? There's this movie.
Yeah,
that
but
came
we
out.
didn't
It's
we didn't
Jurassic
like
Park.
that though.
Right, exactly.
So
we didn't like
kind of-
Return of the Jedi either. I mean, we liked it. I like Return of the Jedi. I do like Return of the Jedi. But it's the weakest of the original trilogy. I think they're setting themselves up for the same thing. I think they're following a very similar path, and that's why I'm looking forward to Episode 8 so much. Is that I hope it's not weird in the way that it's like, hey, we're copying all the weirdness of Empire Strikes Back, and we're just making Empire Strikes Back Part 2.
You hope that it just does some weird shit that we don't
Yeah,
expect.
exactly. And then with Colin Trevorrow doing 9, good grief. I don't know. I don't know what to think there. It just makes me think, okay, so they're going to play the nostalgia card hard for 9 to round out the trilogy? What? That's got me worried. Back to this movie.
So yeah, we're about to do our pod race, which I think is the best part of the movie. I think it's
second best part of the movie.
What's the best part? Oh, the
Duel of the
lightsaber.
Fates. Duel of the Fates
Okay.
is, I think, is the best part.
Okay. But it's all the only reason I would say it's the best part of the movie is not necessarily because it's the most enjoyable part of the movie. I think the lightsaber fight is the most enjoyable part, but it's also new. It's also something new. And that's what you're talking about. It's something new we haven't seen before in Star Wars, and it was enjoyable on top of that.
Also, it plays, I think this is the one thing in this movie
Oh, look, a fart joke.
Yeah, we had a shit joke before where Jar Jar stepped in fucking, I don't know, bantha fodder, which is food, by the way. They continue to use the word poodoo, and I don't think it means what they think it means. I'm serious. It was established in Return of the Jedi when Jabba the Hutt says that I guess Han and Leia will be bantha fodder. He says poodoo in Huttese. Poodoo sounds distinctly
Like poo-poo.
scatological, right? It's scatological. Poodoo. It's like doo-doo or poo-poo. But fodder is food. That's what it's supposed to be. Bantha fodder would be bantha food. And then at the end of this race, when Sebulba loses, spoilers, he says, poodoo, as though he's saying shit. The correct word would be feech.
That's correct. It would be feech.
It would be feech. And feech this movie. Feech this movie in its lurdo. Listen to our Caravan of Courage episode if you don't understand what the hell we're talking about.
You need to brush up on your Ewokese, apparently.
That's right.
Which was...
That blue-haired person is wearing a very similar slave getup as slave Leia.
Yeah, she is. The Ewokese language is... Let's just talk about how that's about 1,000,000 leagues better than whatever the language is that this two-headed alien translates everything, because
Huttese. It's Huttese.
Huttese?
I think everyone on Tatooine, including I think Watto and Anakin and Sebulba and all these various alien species, I think they're all speaking Huttese.
well, no damn effort goes into the translations that they do for the announcers, because much later in the race, one of the lines is, "That little human being is out of his mind," and then the guy goes, "Punta da punta," and then the next line is, "They're side by side, bangu da bangu."
He's not translating. He's not translating.
Oh, he's not?
No, he's got his own separate lines that were not actually translated. So here's an interesting thing. Originally, the announcers were supposed to be it was this elaborate costume that was a two-headed creature that was practical. One of the creatures was played by Greg Proops, the comedian, and I can't remember. I'm sorry, it's in my notes somewhere, but I can't find it. The other was played by another person. And they were both speaking English. They both had separate lines that were different kinds of commentary on this race. What happened was George Lucas decided, no, I want to make a digital creature. So he made a digital creature. And then he turned one of the aliens into a Huttese-speaking creature and didn't subtitle any of the lines because he just thought it would be fine, I guess. So what's actually happening there is that the Huttese we can't understand because it's not subtitled, and it's totally different from the English or basic that's being spoken by Greg Proops' character.
Well, that came across really well. So I'm glad he made that decision. It was definitely the right choice because it definitely doesn't look like it's just really shitty translation job.
Oh, did you see Warwick Davis?
Yeah.
In the crowd?
I always am happy when I see Warwick
hanging
Davis.
Hanging out with Watto. All right, so let's see. We've got some time here. My thoughts on the pod race really quickly as this sequence goes forward. I think this is really exciting. I really like the pod race. I still like it. I think of all of the special effects in this movie, the digital effects, this has probably aged the best.
Yeah.
I think that they put more effort into this. There's some stuff in the final battle on Naboo that looks just straight up unfinished. Like there's no texture to it.
Oh yeah,
there's shots of the tanks. That
going back to our Clone Wars critique.
Oh, it looks like it belongs in the Clone Wars cartoon.
Well, yeah, but it looks like it's got like PS2, landscapes in the background.
Yeah.
Like that's
just
how shitty it looks.
No textures, nothing. Very drab and uninteresting. I think this stuff still looks pretty good. Mm-hmm. It's certainly very interesting. I think the sound design is amazing.
Awesome. Yeah. The fact that each of the different pods, that their different engines have a very distinct sound.
Mm-hmm. Every single one. And as they pass, you can hear each individual one has a unique sound to it. And that's fucking cool. This looks dangerous too.
It does. Well, I mean, you just think that I love the design of the pods. I love that we've basically got these little tiny seats that are just being dragged behind by gigantic fucking engines that look really janky.
Yeah.
Like they look janky.
Just
they look dangerous
together.
as shit.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's like as fast as you can possibly get for, this brief span of time. These things are not meant to last. They are not meant to be safe by any means. Like it's just as fast as they can get them to go. And it looks dangerous, and dangerous makes it look interesting. Like the design is cool. The sound design is cool. So yeah, pod race.
Yep.
Right?
Thumbs up on the pod race. Still holds up.
I mean, it's still like the aliens look really stupid. All the CG aliens.
All the CG aliens look stupid. And it's not that George Lucas didn't have the ability. It's not like his team didn't have the ability to put together costumes, because there aren't really any CGI aliens in the crowd. It's mostly costumes, and they look great. They look great. That's the Star Wars that I want to see. The spectators and all of the different kinds of aliens that are out there in costumes are the kind of practical aliens that I want to see, and not this CG garbage. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the pod race. It's still going to last a long time, so I was thinking we could go back and cover some things that we missed in our notes. Did you have anything?
Well, I was thinking, the fact that we had our midichlorian scene where we learned
did we
that
have it already? Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Where we learned that Anakin's power level was over 9,000. I'm sorry.
In a really weird moment where Qui-Gon pricks Anakin's finger and takes a blood sample without his permission and then lies to him about why he's taking a blood sample. Creep town, man.
Yeah, it is. Man, you steal people's blood.
Not fucking cool.
But anyways, so I thought that in that scene where we made the fantasy element of sorcery in this story into a definite explainable scientific trait, we could potentially have round 2 of our conversation that I wasn't prepared for when you threw it on me during fucking Caravan of Courage.
I think it's a good place to have that conversation, because Caravan of Courage is very blatantly a fantasy film. But
yes,
I mean, I think that we need to keep this short because the argument can be summed up very, very simply about basically how we think of genre and the purpose of genre.
And the value of genre.
You don't value genre very much, I don't think.
I think that valuing genre the way you do is detrimental to storytelling.
I think valuing genre the way I do is not detrimental. I think it allows us to analyze stories and figure out why we tell stories, how we tell stories, and why we see patterns and repeated patterns, or why we see repeated patterns throughout storytelling, throughout the ages. I think that's valuable. I think that's valuable to literary scholarship.
I understand recognizing patterns in storytelling, and this is something that I didn't think we had to mention on this podcast. I know you know it, but obviously everyone out there doesn't. I'm very aware of mythological archetypes and stuff. I did my undergraduate thesis on Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces.
We had some comments on our Caravan of Courage episode after we argued about whether or not Star Wars was science fiction or fantasy. I'm in the fantasy camp. I think it's if it needs to be called anything, it should be called fantasy. You're in the science fiction camp. You think if it needs to be called anything, it needs to be called science fiction if you have to pick between those two things. But we had comments ranging from people mentioning Joseph Campbell, which we are both very familiar with. His name has kind of gotten worn out in recent years. So
try not to talk about it.
It's a little too easy to bring up Joseph Campbell. But, well, Joseph Campbell and the monomyth and the hero's journey, and it's the hero of a thousand faces.
I mean, anyone who's studied any mythology at all. I mean, not even mythology now. Like Joseph Campbell's archetypes and stuff. I have a textbook for next semester that is just about like plotting and writing stories, and it's based on his hero's journey.
Any nerd with access to the internet at some point has been like, oh my God, there was this thing that this guy wrote, and holy shit. And so
we try not to talk about him.
Right.
But anyways, though, like I am very aware of the fantasy archetypes and stuff that are in the Star Wars series. I mean, obviously I can tick off the hero's journey like anybody else. I can see the call to adventure, the refusal, the meeting of the mentor, the crossing the threshold. Like I know it very well.
They use it in The Force Awakens too.
Yes, they absolutely do. But basically what I'm saying is that archetypes, illusions, themes, all of this is subtext. This is all stuff that you can only see after you have dug into a text and you have looked at it. And that's subjective. It's subjective. And because basically if you're talking about what makes something objective, you have to be able to determine like what the author specifically intended, and determining something like authorial intent is a big issue.
I mean, I think subjectivity is a matter of qualifying or qualifying something in so many words, and objectivity is quantifying something. Like if you can measure something, it's objective. But if you can't necessarily measure it and you have to qualify it with, subjective information or your own opinions, then of course that's subjective.
I mean, it's everything is also reader response, right? Like, and if you're talking about like post-structural readings, then you're talking about everything going through a lens that's predetermined because of your geographic location, because of the way you were raised, because of the experiences in your life. So you may see the mentor character in Obi-Wan, right? Or you may see the refusal of the call in Luke at first not wanting to go to Alderaan.
It's entirely cultural and learned.
But everybody may not see that.
Yes.
So that makes it subjective. And if you're talking about something that's subjective, then you're talking about something that's difficult to categorize. And my argument is that no one can argue that people travel from place to place in Star Wars with spaceships, or that it's set in outer space. And these are as close to objective observations as you can possibly get. And though they're superficial observations, they are typically associated with primarily science fiction. So also if you look at the prequels, which unfortunately are canon, then also even your magical elements are defined scientifically with midichlorians.
Sure. And I think that the idea of midichlorians is obviously a science fiction element. It can't be anything else. They try to...
I mean, you calculate something in a person's bloodstream.
Quantify. When you take something that is mystic and nebulous and magical, like straight up magical, like the Force in the original trilogy...
It's religious.
...is magical and religious.
It is supernatural.
It is fantastic and supernatural. When you try to quantify that with midichlorians and say that there's a thing that we can calculate and we can say, his midichlorians are over 20,000. That's higher than Master Yoda's. What does that mean? Blah, blah, blah. You're quantifying something. You're turning it into a science, therefore science fiction. That is understandable. Despite that, despite that science fiction element, Star Wars is overwhelmingly more interested in ideas associated with fantasy and adventure.
You're talking
and the hero's
about
journey.
things, you're talking about things that are underlying. They are things beneath the surface, and I'm talking about those things being subjective. And if something is subjective, then it's not as easy for people to categorize.
Okay, but my point about the value of genre was you use genre to identify not just tropes, but archetypes, underlying ideas, themes. And what you're saying is that you use genre to identify those things in order to put them objectively on a bookshelf and say, are there tick marks? Do you have these tick marks? Does it have this,
Right,
and this?
because-
Then you put it on a bookshelf, and your value, the value that you see in genre, if any, is simply to categorize it for display or to find something.
Because obviously, you send your query letter off to an agent and you say that you've got a steampunk / gas lamp time travel alternate universe dying Earth science fantasy, and she's going to delete your fucking email.
Exactly. Well, and
right?
we did get a comment about Star Wars being space fantasy, and that's what it should be called. But to me, I think that devalues what I'm saying, because if you tell me that you're in a band and I ask you what your band sounds like and you tell me that it's like post-emo scream gothcore, that doesn't mean fucking anything to me. And I think that the finer point that you put on something as far as genre goes, the more that you lose about the value of what I think genre has in identifying tropes and meanings and archetypes and story structure and all of that kind of stuff that I think is valuable in genre. Now, the reason that you think that the genre is harmful is why?
I think that determining genre for anything other than superficial categorization, and what I'm talking about is like so people can find it on Netflix, it's detrimental to the text. And when I say text, I mean wrestling can be a text. Like go check out Roland Barthes, The Critic. Like anything is a text. So if you determine genre for anything other than superficial categorization, then it's detrimental because you're imposing standards on it that have predetermined stigmas that the text may not always conform to or always intend to form to, but will still be judged by those standards regardless. So I'm talking about you going into an MFA program and people turning up their noses because you use the word fantasy because it's unfairly associated with cardboard cutout characters, with overplotted plot.
But you've just said it. You just said the word unfairly. That is the burden of the uneducated reader.
No, but that's what happens when you try to put the value of genre onto the subjective instead of the objective.
But I think that I think the value there is identifying the kinds of stories we tell and why we tell them. I don't think there's any other way to do it. I don't think that we identify those things without seeing similarities across the board. Now, if you were to tell me that someone builds a genre piece based on, what has come before and says, well, we have to hit all of these objective, observable, repeating patterns and all of these things, I think that's where you have a problem. And when the problem comes from something that is built to be derivative. It is derived from a genre that was originally intended to identify patterns in storytelling that already exist.
I understand.
It doesn't have anything to do with deriving them from a genre that exists, but I mean that's entirely what I mean. We've already invoked the name of Joseph Campbell. That's completely what Joseph Campbell was about. Completely
right. He was
and
just
entirely
going around the world just saying, look, we all tell stories and here are the same things.
Joseph Campbell did the exact same thing that you're basically saying that genre has no place in.
What I'm saying is that if you use that to look as a personal kind of thing, right? Okay, so like you can call a novel a Western to put it on the shelf where it belongs. That sort of genre typing is fine for me. It's practical, but genre typing based on what's inside the work is detrimental because you're trying to determine the soul of the work, which is a personal, subjective activity that only matters for you or for a critic who is openly saying, this is what I subjectively see. And that's fine for you. But saying that that's what it should be called is wrong because that's your personal subjective opinion of the underlying subtext of that story.
Sure, but
and it only works for you subjectively, or for if you're displaying your opinion about it. It doesn't work for actually categorizing it.
I don't. I mean, but I think that it's perfectly fine that we categorize things in as objective a way as possible in for easy access and for archiving purposes. I think that's totally fine. In fact, I wouldn't want Star Wars to be under the fantasy label on a bookshelf.
That's all I'm talking about.
I know that's all you're talking about, but I think that genre is more valuable than that. And when we have a conversation about whether or not Star Wars is science fiction or fantasy, I don't think that what I'm talking about is where does it belong on a bookshelf, because that's not a conversation. That's an obvious answer. The conversation I want to have is about the nature of storytelling and why we tell stories. You invoked Westerns. You wouldn't call a samurai film necessarily a Western, but if you're having a conversation about the samurai films of the 60s, you would absolutely call them Westerns because that's where they come from. That's where they are, inspired by. That's what they are inspired by. And we can follow it's basically like the.
But I mean, samurai films, they have their own history too, besides just the ones that are invoked from the rest of Westerns. They have their own archetypes.
Of course, but without identifying those patterns, then you cannot therefore go back and basically follow the heritage and the heredity of artistic influence.
I understand what you're saying about what the value of determining genre is like that for an academic light or something like that, but I don't think it matters for the regular Joe out there. And to me, the thing is that when genre has this kind of importance attached to it, that's when people start asking or expecting a text to conform to things that may not necessarily that the text may not necessarily need or want to conform to, so that the people in your MA or MFA program expect you to follow Campbell's hero's journey
absolutely.
When you do your fantasy novel.
I get what you're saying. That is the burden of the uneducated. It's not my concern. When I'm having a conversation, when I want to have a conversation about storytelling, that's what I feel is the value of genre. And all you can see is the negative of it based on people who don't know any better.
Well, my experience of it is that it winds up limiting the scope of the text and putting up barriers or at least obstacles
for
that the text
uneducated.
Has to go over.
For the uneducated. It's for a very limited group of people that you shouldn't have to worry about anyway.
How many people have this conversation, though? Like, how many people have this conversation? Like, I mean, most normal people don't repeatedly have this conversation, for one thing.
Well, normativity is subjective, of course, first off. But if you're listening to this and you would have a conversation with this with one of your friends or with us or with anyone who would be interested in having this conversation, please comment on our stuff. We want to hear what you think about this, because this is the kind of stuff that makes
us stay up really late at night yelling at each other.
Yes.
Star Wars and as also, science fiction or fantasy.
Also, but it's why I love movies. It's why I love media. It's why all of my hobbies involve sitting on my ass in front of a screen, because this is the stuff that's fascinating to me. So
I understand. Okay. Final.
We're on the same page. We're on the same page in that we understand why we're on different pages. Right? I
understand recognizing those archetypes. I understand seeing those things and saying, oh, these are things that typically are reoccurring in, fantasy or westerns or noir films or whatever, right? I understand following those patterns and recognizing them as subtext in films that on the surface superficially are a different thing.
In order to understand the genealogy of storytelling and artistic
and where did this
inspiration.
Story come from?
Yes.
Here's where it came from. I get that, but when I talk about genre, I feel like if you classify something, if you say something is something, then you're classifying it. And the only way to go about that, the only way that's not detrimental to go about a classification, is if it's superficial and purely for the purpose of finding it on fucking Netflix.
Okay. I'm not arguing with that. I'm not arguing with genre's place in two different realms, in the objective realm and the subjective realm. And I think they're valuable in both places. I don't think you think they're valuable in both places, and that's where our
I don't.
That's where we really differ.
I think it's practical in one place and often detrimental in the other place. And I'm someone who academically loves to, as you said it, find the genealogy of a text, right? I love seeing those underlying themes and finding them. But if I call Star Wars a fantasy film to the large majority of people, I think that's that's detrimental to Star Wars.
Or it starts a conversation that can educate people about what it means to really understand storytelling at a basic level. At not a basic level, at a fundamental level, at a necessary level for really understanding why and how we tell stories. That's what it does. I don't think it's detrimental. I think you're educating people, and I think that's good. I think that's positive. I don't think that's detrimental at all.
Wow.
But we have to get back to this movie because it's still going. We are
it's the Japor snippet.
we're like an hour and 20 minutes into this movie.
That's it? Oh my God. I thought that argument was going to last like at least half the movie, and we were going to be almost done with it now.
No, it's lasted several hours before when we haven't been recording. But what's happened since we've been
he won the pod race. That's it.
Yes, but also we didn't talk about Pernilla August as Shmi Skywalker. Pernilla August being a Swedish actress and screenwriter and director. It's very prominent in Sweden, very famous in that country, and a very good actress in her own right. What the fuck is she doing in this movie? How did she get in this movie? How did that happen?
I don't know. It's really weird.
Was she maybe she was like a friend of Liam Neeson or something like that? I think that might be how it was. Maybe, but I mean, she is absolutely wasted talent in this. She's given no direction. I would say that she's probably the second best performer. She has the second best performance in the entire movie.
That's really sad.
Simply because she is a great actress that even without any direction kind of knows generally what direction it should go in, but she needed more.
Man, that scene where Anakin and her say goodbye is
oh my God,
so awful. It's like nobody could have cried a little bit.
I mean, it's a son and a mother being separated indefinitely. Is it too much to ask that someone cries? Is that too much to ask? I mean, in a moment that should be wrought with emotion, with crazy emotion, that's melodrama. That's an opportunity. I'm not saying that I love melodrama, but if there's an opportunity for melodrama, by all means, take the opportunity, take advantage of it.
It's so disjointed. The whole scene where like he's super happy and yippee and walking away from mom all skippy, and then he's suddenly like, I can't do it, mom. I just can't do it. And then he does it. And like there's no flow to this change in emotions. I mean, there's really not even a change in emotions. It's just...
I mean, and speaking of the connection to Shmi Skywalker, and you mentioned that in the original trilogy, the Force is very religious kind of thing. And even in these movies, it seems to be somewhat religious with how the Jedi are organized and how they're very dogmatic. That's the best word for it. The Jedi, there's a Jedi code. Anakin is Space Jesus.
Oh yeah. What have we already said that?
Oh,
have we already gotten there?
Oh yeah,
to
absolutely.
Space Jesus?
Are you kidding? We're on Coruscant now. Shmi Skywalker's long gone. We're done with that. Anakin is Space Jesus. She has a conversation with Qui-Gon Jinn where he asks who Anakin's father was, and she says that there was no father.
There was no father. I carried him. I gave birth. I raised him. I can't explain what happened. His mom's the Virgin Shmi.
Virgin Shmi. Praise be to the Virgin Shmi.
What the fuck? I mean, do they even realize?
So she's the Holy Mother. Shmi is the Holy Mother. Anakin is the Messiah, and the Father, the Heavenly Father above, is Tonka Truck. Praise be to Tonka Truck. He died for us all. He died
for our sins. Okay, another problem I have with the whole Anakin mom thing, and this is my biggest problem with it, is, okay, Qui-Gon could have, let's be real, he could have just taken Anakin's mom.
He has a quote-unquote laser sword.
And I know she has some device, some tracking device that will, battle royale blow her up or whatever if she gets out of the safety zone. Yeah, they said that at the dinner table.
Oh, okay, right on. Weird.
So,
but what is she doing for Watto? She seems like she's a stay-at-home slave, like
right?
Just for her son.
Just takes care of her son. I don't know. But so let's say that Qui-Gon didn't want to get involved so much that he was killing people. He didn't want to, they didn't have the means to find the tracking device and extract it from her or turn it off or whatever, and they don't want her to explode. Fine. Okay, so they don't take Mom during this journey. But I don't understand why it does not become Anakin's number one top priority in his life to get his mother freed from slavery.
It's been a while since I've seen episode 2, and I can't remember what it is that pushes him to go get his mother. I think he senses a disturbance in the Force, that she's been abducted, and then he's like, oh shit, my mom was a slave.
He's like 20 years old or something at that point.
He's older. Yeah.
Right?
I think there's like a 10-year gap or some almost 10-year gap.
It's been like in 10 years he couldn't scrounge up the cost of, we just saw a slave traded for a pod racer, which a slave was able to find the parts to scrounge up to build.
Right.
That's how cheap a pod
racer
is. Okay. He, in 10 years of training as a Jedi, he could not find the funds to the equivalent of a pod racer.
Well, I have to assume that were the Jedi Council an actual organization in an actual universe where they were, respected and in charge of shit, that if they take in someone into their order, that any of their family that were living in hardship would probably be taken care of.
Well, and I mean, I thought slavery was outlawed by the Republic too.
It is.
Doesn't Padme say that?
It is outlawed by the Republic, and Tatooine is in the Outer Rim, which is kind of too far from the government center. I mean, we hear that. That's why organized crime, the Hutts,
right? But so that's like
Tatooine.
A whole nother reason for them to be like, well, this is illegal anyway.
This is illegal anyway. We're
so
going to take care of your
So they just come
mom.
back with more Jedi, and they say, no, we're taking her. And by the way, this is illegal, so you don't want to have this conversation with us.
What happened to protectors of peace and justice throughout the galaxy?
I just can't believe that in all that time, at no point were there enough funds or concern. I mean, that would be his priority. That would be all he would think about all the time is, I miss my mom. I've got to go help my mom. Like, it just blows my mind that she's just completely forgotten.
Okay, so check this out. Talking about George Lucas's direction of these actors, Liam Neeson had to convince George Lucas to keep this. There's a scene after Qui-Gon tells Shmi that he's freed Anakin, and Anakin runs off to pack his bags. Liam Neeson had to convince George Lucas to keep the moment in where he puts his hand on Shmi Skywalker's shoulder. Had to convince him to do that because Lucas felt that it might be out of character for the very stoic Jedi, right? But Neeson thought that there should be an emotional connection between those two characters. Imagine that, people with emotions.
What?
And then in an interview, later on in an interview with Premiere Magazine, Neeson defended his action, defending the scene by saying, quote, "It may be Star Wars, but we have to have something in there for the adults." And I don't think it's just about having something in there for the adults. How about something in here for humans?
Yeah, I mean, we watched this movie
beings,
too.
Like we watched this.
Humans do.
Humans watch it, not just robots. This isn't just for bleep bloops. So, I mean,
sounds like a racial slur.
Against droids?
Yes.
You filthy bleep bloop. It's too cute to be a racial slur. It's just amazing that such a simple gesture of emotion or compassion was deemed too emotional by George Lucas. Like, he just wanted absolutely flat nothing.
When we got to the planet after the Japor snippet scene, do you know what a Japor snippet is?
I don't know, but I know that George Lucas at least rewatched this movie when he was making episode 3 because Padme gets buried with it, and you see that.
I'm referring
in maybe the most subtle moment in the entire prequel trilogy.
I'm referring to the necklace that Anakin gives Padme, and he says, "I carved it out of a Japor snippet." Okay, that's what he says.
I didn't look it up on Wikipedia.
I did.
Okay. Did it take you to Wikipedia?
Yes.
Okay.
I found. I mean, it sounds.
Oh, speaking of Wikipedia, there's Wookiees. And then watch this next shot right
Oh,
here.
we're gonna get our
bottom left
our
corner.
ETs.
Yep, and there's
Oh,
ETs.
there they are.
Referred to in the Star Wars universe, their species is Asogians.
Okay.
Because they're from Brodo Asogi or something like that.
Whatever. So the Japor snippet. Why are you giving me that pouty face?
I'm giving you a pouty face because it's fine.
So Japor snippet, when you say you carved something out of something, that makes the other thing a noun, right?
I assume that the snippet what means a piece and Japor is the type of wood.
No, yes, but it sounds, the way he says it, I carved it out of a Japor snippet. It sounds like Japor snippet is a thing. Apparently Japor is some kind of ivory wood. At least that's what they say in Legends. It's not canon, but like...
Oh, what has now become passed into legend.
Right, yeah.
Right, so to speak.
So, and we're talking about, like books and stuff that are not technically canon anymore. Anyways, what a stupid use of the word snippet if it wasn't just part of the noun Japor. If it wasn't... I mean, really? He used the word snippet? That's really weird.
It's not even close to the worst thing in this movie. Not even close.
But also, like, online, basically people just refer to the necklace as the Japor snippet, which is really weird too. It's just convoluted, and it was an unnecessary weird reference that didn't have any purpose existing.
Well, at least Lucas had the hindsight to bring it back for Padme's funeral.
The necklace.
Yes.
Luckily,
necklace.
not the weird reference. Oh, and then right after that, I wanted to talk about, she said, I care for you. And then he says, I care for you too, only I. And she fills him in with, miss your mother. And I say, yep, that's where we're going with this relationship. That's what it's built on.
Gross. Are you going to talk about Freud now?
Well, I mean, it's just, fuck your mom.
It speaks
right?
for itself.
Like, I don't have to talk about Freud.
We've missed the council scenes. Yoda will come back, but in the version we're watching and all the versions after the initial DVD release, Yoda was replaced by a CGI Yoda. But in the original release of this, and you can still see it on the original DVD release and the VHS release, Yoda is a puppet like he was in the original trilogy, but not like he was in the original trilogy because the Yoda puppet in episode 1 is dire.
Oh, yeah.
It looks so
I think I know. I think I've seen it.
It doesn't fucking look like Yoda. And there's also another of Yoda's species in the
there
council.
is.
Yaddle. Yaddle and
There's
Yoda.
a shot of him even in this version.
So whoever it is that's responsible for naming aliens in Star Wars was able to name E.T.'s race or E.T.'s species as Asogians, but no one has named Yoda's species yet. It's just referred to as Yoda's species.
Whatever.
Because they're so mysterious and old.
So mysterious.
The only two that we know of are both Jedi, apparently.
What's really mysterious is that we were informed that it is possible that Anakin was conceived by midichlorians.
Yep.
Do they even realize what they're saying when they say that? Like, is there even an understanding? Like, they have made it very clear that midichlorians are microscopic, intelligent life forms.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to get up into that vagina? Like, that's what's going on here?
That's rude.
Yeah? I mean, that's what they're saying.
I guess so. If they're in all living beings, I don't know. Who knows?
Conceived is a very specific word.
It is, but I mean, if the Force was so strong with Shmi Skywalker, if we're going to use the midichlorian, if we're going to use the M word,
we're watching episode 1.
If we're talking about midichlorians, and we're supposed to believe that Shmi Skywalker conceived of Anakin simply through the abundance of midichlorians in her system, then why isn't she some incredibly crazy powerful Jedi? Or Force adept or anything?
I don't think they were in her system.
You think that they just entered her womb?
Well, I mean, they're saying that the midichlorians conceived Anakin. Like, they impregnated her. That's the other way you say that.
God, it's so stupid.
So my impression was that she is not force sensitive, but that the world, the midichlorians and the life force of the cosmic force or whatever, apparently there's a difference that I don't know, entered her vagina, I guess. I really don't know, but she was impregnated by them. That's what is like they sort of taper it by being like, it's possible, but that's the only possibility they suggest to us. So it's like, well, I guess that's what you're telling us it is.
The science in Star Wars has always been weak, especially when they try.
It's really uncomfortable.
It is.
To think about.
I think I've missed the shot. I can't remember exactly where it was because this whole movie is just a fucking 2 hour and 15-minute blur to me. But one of the shots of like the cityscapes with the sun setting in Coruscant was our hint for this week. And Eric Wallace, once again on Facebook, got it correct. Good job. He also guessed the one for Caravan of Courage. So, Eric Wallace, big Star Wars fan. Big Star Wars fan.
You I can't tell if you're congratulating or belittling there, Dustin.
Oh, congratulations. You must love all the Star Wars.
You should be proud of someone for, figuring out your little game.
Yeah, it's true. I put too much work into the game to just have nobody guess these things, because that's how it is a lot of weeks where it's just like, nope, no one's got anything. So, sincere congratulations to Eric Wallace, and I'm giving him a hard time because I know him. He's a buddy from college, so
okay, give him a harder time. Then
I can throw him under the bus a little bit and talk about how much he loves the Ewok movies and the prequels. So
how about the prophecy? Let's talk about the prophecy.
I think the prophecy is one of the bigger, like, overarching blunders in the prequel narrative.
We really needed that, right? We really needed a chosen one.
Why? What does that do for anybody? I don't get that. Like, Luke Skywalker didn't have to be the chosen one.
Right.
There was nothing about chosen one. That feels like such like a...
It's so much more important when it's just a person.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, when fate decides that you are the one that is going to be the one, so to speak, then it removes people from being able to put themselves in that character. Mm-hmm. Like, when you have a character like, I don't know, like a lot of the superheroes, like the really great superheroes like Spider-Man are like this. Like, when it's a character that is like anybody else.
It's just anybody.
Then you think that, hey, that could be me.
Right.
That could happen to me.
But when you've got to do your chosen one stuff, then it's like, well, I guess I wasn't in the running for that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, so it's hereditary, so it would have to be in my family. Well, I guess that can't happen. And, I guess it just comes down to dumb luck if I'm going to be the one that has the super special powers. And nope, still
has a power level of
still sitting in the garage with Cheeto
20,
dust on my
000.
shirt. So
the prophecy is basically that Anakin will bring balance to the Force. I guess the balance that he brings is the balance that comes by destroying the Jedi.
That is the going theory. The going theory is that bringing balance to the Force ultimately meant, and apparently Anakin accomplished it. At the end of this movie, Yoda says that there are only ever two Sith, no more and no less.
Right.
And then there's a prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force. Anakin kind of does that by killing all of the Jedi, or assisting in killing all the Jedi, leaving only, well, according to just the mainline movie canon, just Obi-Wan and Yoda, and then Palpatine and Vader.
But the thing is that...
Which is two light side Force users, two dark side Force users, which is balance, right? That's how.
But I mean,
people
with Clone
explain it.
Wars, we find out, like, or not with Clone Wars, but with
Rebels.
Rebels.
Well, yeah, with other things that are canon in Rebels, we find out that there was at least one other Jedi, actually 2, 3, 4. I mean, there are several
that survived.
I don't know if the Inquisitors in that show count as like Sith lords or Sith people. If that's the case, then Yoda was wrong about there only being 2 because that the Inquisitors increased that number.
My point, though, is
But
that
still,
the world that they live in that needs balance brought to it, apparently, because the Jedi apparently think this is going to be a positive thing, I guess.
That's the thing that I don't understand is when Qui-Gon brings Anakin before the council, he does it. He tries to convince them to let him train Anakin because he thinks he is the one who will bring balance to the Force, therefore thinking that it's like a positive thing, like
that apparently there's not balance now and that it'll make things better because things aren't great. I mean, there's a lot of corruption and problems in the galaxy.
Sure, yeah, of course.
So I suppose they think that balance means that things will be better.
I assume that.
But obviously, if balance is Anakin killing the Jedi, then it just makes things worse. My thing to say about that, though, is that 2 Sith, just 2 Sith, do a hell of a lot more damage than a fuck ton of Jedi do good.
Yeah. Yeah, when you scale the damage that they do compared to the good that the Jedi do, yeah, I think so.
Right.
Especially when the Jedi are missing opportunities to, like, free slaves of people that are in their order.
And I mean, we're talking about, in the original trilogy, like
members.
the whole galaxy being under the control of bad guys, essentially.
Yeah. Well,
right?
Yeah.
Like, and there we have, the correct number of Jedi still being alive.
Sure.
It's balanced, technically.
Right. And then when Obi-Wan dies, Luke steps up to the plate and becomes a Jedi.
And balanced again.
And there are 2. And then
So we've got 2 and 2, and still the bad guys are overwhelmingly in control.
Right. Yep.
So I don't like the whole balance to the Force thing. So balance means that the bad guys win?
Here's a theory. What if the perspective of the one who will bring balance to the Force according to the Jedi is in fact what people theorize it is? It's that the one who will bring balance to the Force will destroy the Jedi Order and level the playing field. And that's why when they find Anakin and Qui-Gon thinks that he is the one who will bring balance to the Force, that he brings them to the Jedi Order to train under the Jedi so that he doesn't become a bad guy. So that he doesn't become the guy that destroys the Jedi. If they train them in their, if they train him in their ways, then he won't turn to the dark side and destroy the Jedi. What if that's their approach to it? What if that's what they think? That they think that the one who brings the balance will destroy the Order, so they have to get to him early and first.
Well, it didn't work.
It didn't work, but I think I can explain myself out of that theory because the reason that they say they won't train him is, number 1, he's too old. Number 2, he's got a lot of fear and anger and aggression and all this kind of stuff, which are traits of the dark side and whatever. And that's why they reject him.
And also they say that fear and anger and aggression comes from his mother being, away from him.
Right.
Which they could remedy pretty easily.
Yeah. I mean, they've all got laser swords.
And probably have enough money to buy a pod racer.
Yes.
Anyways, it's stupid to have a prophecy at all. And yeah. There's Darth Maul.
Did we have any comments or questions from Darth Maul, who apparently wants to seek revenge on the Jedi for something that's never explained. At last,
is he our Phantom Menace?
One of his 3 lines in the movie. No, I think it's supposed to be Sidious. I think it's supposed to be Palpatine. He's the one that's kind of secretly organizing these things.
Oh, I read something online too in one of the listicles I was reading, where it was like Sidious, right? Like Darth Sidious, Insidious, Darth Vader, Invader.
What now?
Right? Like
yes.
Invader, Insidious.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right.
And then Maul just dropped the ball, I guess.
Invader, Insidious. Oh, that's interesting. In Tyrannus. Nope. In Plagueis. No, that doesn't work. It works for 2 of them.
Yeah.
Good. That's kind of weird.
Whatever.
Yeah, one of Darth Maul's 3 lines in this movie is, "At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have revenge."
For what?
For what? What'd they do? Did they steal your homework? Steal your Jedi homework?
I don't know. We don't learn.
I know. Do we have any comments from Facebook? I think we do.
Yeah, we had a couple.
And let's address them.
Sarah Baglioni.
Or Baglione. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
She mentioned that this was the only one she had seen, which is so unfortunate.
She said that she's never seen any of the Star Wars movies except for this one, and this wasn't. And granted, people have told her that this doesn't really count because it's so bad, and that's true.
And she said she's going to try to watch the original
As of
trilogy.
her writing that comment, she was a little ways into A New Hope, and she said that it wasn't really grabbing her. I can't even begin to put myself in the place of someone who's never seen Star Wars and watches it for the first time, like when they're older. And I don't think it's about nostalgia goggles, because when I watch Star Wars, I can and do watch it critically, and I think Star Wars is brilliant, and I think The Empire Strikes Back is even better. So, like, to me, Star Wars still works on me as a nostalgia thing and as like an actual, critical analysis kind of thing. But I don't know, does it take a certain type of person to get Star Wars after a certain age?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you have to have a love for science fiction or fantasy or both.
Sure.
If you're not into genre stuff, then you're not going to be into these films. Like,
I mean, if you watch The Force Awakens and that's the only Star Wars movie you've ever seen, and you go back to the original trilogy,
I wonder what that's going to be like.
I think the original trilogy is going to feel dated.
Yeah.
It's going to feel
will.
slow.
It'll feel slow.
Because the original trilogy takes its time with the things that it does.
I mean, all their movies did. They took their time. Like, that's not the
Yeah,
way.
that's
That's not
absolutely.
the way we make films anymore.
That's
very,
absolutely
very
true.
rarely.
Very rare. Certainly not tentpole movies.
Yeah.
So
We don't take our time with movies anymore. We kind of, it's all about how fast we can
take
keep
note
the
of the
pace.
texture on this grass right here.
Well, right there, it looks like grass.
Yeah, that looks like real grass. Just take note of it, like in these
Look there.
early scenes. Oh my God! I mean, even there you can
at
see the texture just starts disappearing.
Unfinished. It looks unfinished.
Unfinished. There are certain shots of like the tanks
city
going
is beautiful,
and they're not fast, but these long shots of tanks going over the fields that look terrible, that have no texture of the tanks whatsoever. They look absolutely unfinished. Like there's no other word for it. Like someone did not finish their job, or they ran out of time, or something.
Yeah. Anyway, so my advice to Sarah would be, don't watch any more of the prequels and go back and try to get through the original. I feel like to enjoy Force Awakens, you should watch the original trilogy.
I do think it's kind of interesting to recommend like the Machete Order to someone who has legitimately never seen Star Wars before.
Okay.
The Machete Order being where you watch A New Hope and then Return of the Jedi, A New Hope and then Empire Strikes Back, so that you can get the reveal of Darth Vader as Luke's father. Spoilers.
Do you have to say that?
Yeah, I guess I do. And then you go back, you skip episode 1 altogether, because as we'll tell you while watching this, nothing in this movie is substantial.
No, nothing
There
matters.
are very few things that are set forth in this movie that have any effect on anything in the following movies.
No.
So you go back.
All you need to know is he was the slave kid and then he wasn't. And now he's a Jedi.
Pretty much. And Palpatine makes one step toward power.
And
but not even the significant one.
Yeah,
And
I mean, that's really it.
Obi-Wan meets Anakin.
Right,
That's it.
yeah.
It's really it. So then you go back and you watch episodes 2 and 3 to get the backstory of young Darth Vader as a Jedi and his fall. And then you go back and watch Return of the Jedi to watch the end of that story.
Right.
I think that might be interesting. I've also heard the reason that the reveal of Luke and Leia as brother and sister in Return of the Jedi is not as good as the one at the end of episode 3.
It's probably true.
And I agree with that, because they do it twice. In Return of the Jedi, there are 2 scenes where they reveal that, Luke and Leia are brother and sister. In one, it's Obi-Wan and Luke talking to each other, and Luke is just like, oh, Leia's my sister. Oh, I kind of just figured that out.
Oh, wow.
And Obi-Wan's like, yeah, you got it. Good. And then there's a scene with Luke and Leia where he's like, you're my sister, Leia. And she's like, I think I
knew that.
I knew that. Huh. Even when I kissed you, it Weird.
I didn't want her to say she knew it there.
I don't want to say. Oh, yeah, that's.
I wanted her to say, "Oh God, wow."
What does it makes me feel funny in my ding dong? Anyway, no, the opposite of that. And then I think that if you are totally unspoiled, and which if you're listening to this, sorry, if you're totally unspoiled and you watch episode 3 before Return of the Jedi, I can see that last moment where, Padme's dying and she's just given birth and she, we know she's going to at least have Luke, right? And she says Luke, and then she says Leia, and names the other baby, and we're like, oh shit, yeah. you could potentially have an oh shit moment there, right?
If you did the machete order.
If you did the machete order and you didn't listen to my recommendation of the machete order, you just spoiled the shit out of all of it.
But anyways, yeah, I mean, my advice would just be barrel through it. Like, I think it's worth the outcome of that wealth of genre film knowledge to have seen the original trilogy.
I agree. I love how we've just stopped talking about this movie because it's.
My God, who cares what's happening right now?
What else do we talk about?
Are we going to talk about Jar Jar? Just his contribution to the battle is fucking up.
How he's exactly. How he's apparently a general now.
Yeah.
Like Boss Nass, his boss Nass made him a general just because.
Mm-hmm. And he just spends his time just messing stuff up and occasionally getting lucky.
Okay, there's another comment on Facebook that has to do with Jar Jar Binks.
Yes. So Amy Foster McBroom wanted to know our take on the theory that Jar Jar is an evil Sith Lord collaborating with Palpatine.
Okay. This is interesting, but it's very, very much a fan theory kind of thing. It reeks of fan theory. It's never going to be anything more than that. I think it's cute and fun, and it's a way to make lemonade out of lemons, right? But part of the theory is that Jar Jar is successful in the battle, when he's fucking up and messing up and all that kind of stuff. He's not actually messing up. It's that he uses a drunken master style of fighting. Because he's actually a martial arts and force sensitive.
I mean, he does do a pretty Jedi incredible flip into the water when they first dive to.
He does that. That's part of it. Is that little moment there when he does this amazing acrobatic feat. How could he do that if he were really as bumbling as he appears to be? There's a moment here recently that just passed where he says something to somebody and convinces them to do something, which someone was like, hey, Jedi mind trick. He just did it very secretly. Jedi mind trick. And basically he's the one in episode 3 who calls for Palpatine to step into the role as the emperor and form the Galactic Empire, to basically take control of the galaxy and get rid of the separatists and the droid army and all that stuff and make the clone army a clone army of the Empire, right? It's Jar Jar who makes that decision. So tying all those things together, you could say, and that's what people are saying now, it's what if Jar Jar was actually a Dark Lord of the Sith and he was collaborating with Palpatine this whole time, and he was a Force user and a drunken, boxing martial arts master. Yeah.
Okay.
Fun, but I mean, it's the same kind of fan theory as what if James Bond isn't actually a person, but it's a code name? And that explains all of the James Bond movies take place in the same universe, and each one is just a different person who takes the code name of James Bond when the last one dies.
Yeah. Fun
idea, but
yeah, basically, I mean, I'm sure. I mean, that's how I feel about it. It's fun. I prefer to think of Jar Jar as a Sith Lord because I think he is evil. I have
a really great cure for depression.
Yeah.
If you're very depressed, I just want you to look at the background of this battle scene and look at all the dead Gungans.
Ah, true.
That'll clear you right up.
There are a lot of dead Gungans around here. That's pretty wonderful.
I have so many notes that I didn't even get to. So many. I feel stupid going back to most of these because they're so long ago at this point. I don't think I'm going to.
I love that
everyone's a dick in this movie.
Everyone is a dick, yeah.
Obi-Wan refers to, and to be fair, Qui-Gon does have a bad habit in this movie of just picking up people along the way, where it's just like first he picks up Jar Jar, and then he picks up a droid, and then he picks up a little kid, and when he finally picks up the kid, Obi-Wan's like, "Why do I sense that you've picked up another pathetic life form?"
And you're like, "Whoa, Obi-Wan, sort of a dick thing to say," but then you're like, true.
Kind of true.
Anakin's a jerk, leaving C-3PO behind.
Yeah, he's like, "Sorry I didn't finish you, C-3PO, but I'm going to go be a Jedi. Peace out."
And it
doesn't make sense that he made C-3PO in the first place.
Yes, let's talk about that.
Beyond the fact that it's stupid that Darth Vader made C-3PO because again,
why?
Well, I mean, because why? And keep this in mind. Every little connection you make, every callback you make, every relationship that you tie together that wasn't previously tied together, you're taking a universe that was heretofore totally expansive and large and felt real,
and making it tiny.
And you're making it smaller.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I don't need C-3PO and R2 to know each other beforehand.
Nope, totally unnecessary.
Like I said, you were saying it's fine that R2 comes from Naboo. I don't think it is. I think that C-3PO and R2 should just originate on Alderaan, that's where they're from, and they are just in service of Leia's family.
Sure,
and that's how they get involved in the Resistance
I would have been okay with that too.
Stuff.
Introduced R2 and C-3PO in the original trilogy only. You could have new droids in this one. Why not?
Why not new droids? And in hope they make it clear that they've been on adventures at least to some degree before, like they've done things together before. But that doesn't mean that they've known each other since C-3PO was born. The other thing about C-3PO is, why does his slave mom need a protocol droid to help around the house? Maybe a vacuum droid? But a protocol droid?
I mean, let's take a look at C-3PO. He can barely fucking walk.
True.
Right? The only things he's good at is communicating, of being prim and proper and knowing etiquette and speaking a bunch of fucking languages so that he can talk to people and be a diplomat, basically. Why does a slave need a diplomat?
Right. Why? Why does she need to know? How many languages does he know?
6 million? Yeah.
And also the kid knows that? How did he program C-3PO? He knows 6 million languages?
Downloaded it off the internet.
I guess so.
Off the space web.
It just doesn't. And it's a very specific robot. This is a specific robot. Every time we see a robot that looks like C-3PO, it's a protocol droid. Why?
I assume. I mean, yeah.
When we even in this movie we have one. The one at the beginning that brings them tea.
That's true, but there are some droids that have C-3PO's body style but have a different head. But I would assume that they have the same mobility as C-3PO. But one of those droids in the original trilogy is Forlom, I think he's called, and he's one of the bounty hunters that Darth Vader sends after Han Solo.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Anyways, most of them, the ones that look definitely like C-3PO, I think are definitely.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Anyways, why make a protocol droid? Other things, the trace. How did they said that Darth Maul, so they got a message saying back to
They got a message from Naboo saying, "Help, our people are dying. It's terrible. The invasion is killing so many people, blah, blah, blah." And Obi-Wan says, "Don't send a message back because they'll find out where we are." It's a trap. Exactly. Don't send a message back. They'll find out where we are, and they'll trace it, and they'll send it back to us. You're just going to have to put up with it.
And they don't send a message back.
However, in the very next scene, Darth Maul says to Sidious, "If the trace was correct, we will find them quickly, Master." That's the line.
On Tatooine.
On Tatooine.
And then he finds them on Tatooine.
How?
They didn't answer the message.
And they even return to that moment where Padme, dressed up as the handmaiden, sees another message from old dude back on Naboo saying, "Really, please, you have to send us a communication," and she doesn't, and she looks kind of distraught over it. So they sandwich this whole idea of Darth Maul being able to follow a trace of them to Tatooine with 2 instances of them not returning communications from Naboo for fear of being traced.
Yep.
What?
Right. Also, right here, Anakin makes flying into the enemy's ship and shooting it up and, destroying the ship from the inside a whole hell of a lot easier than it even is in, fucking Battlefront.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So, whatever. Just luck.
Yeah, there's this
beginner's luck.
There's this whole conversation going on right now about whether or not Rey from The Force Awakens is a Mary Sue. Mary Sue, do you know what a Mary Sue is? Mary Sue is a character. It has grown to become like a self-insert character who's super good at everything and everyone loves him or her. The male version is a Gary Sue. And there's this conversation going on right now about whether or not Rey is a Mary Sue, where she's just automatically good at everything that she does with no explanation, and she's just like a self-insert character for she can't do any wrong because she's perfect with she can fight with a bow staff, she can fight with a lightsaber without ever having used it. She's better at flying Han Solo's ship than even he is, all this kind of stuff. I don't agree with it. I think that...
No, I think she's just good at those things that we just mentioned.
I think she's good at those things, and I think that they explain well enough why she's good at some of the things that she's good at in the movie. And I just think that we need more characters like her in general. She is a female character that is not compromised based on her looks or the fact that she's a female whatsoever.
Right.
We need more of that. So I'm not on that team. Anakin Skywalker in this movie, however, is totally a Gary Sue.
Yeah.
Completely. He jumps inside this, sure, he can fly a pod racer, and sure, he's got instincts and reflexes and stuff, but he gets inside a spaceship and fumbles his way into destroying the Trade Federation station.
Yep, totally believable. Also, Padme here, right? I mean, she gets, and I love that they fall for her decoy, even though they thought that she was the decoy, and then they fall for the other they're so easily tricked.
Well, everyone in this movie is stupid,
apparently. And then also she's a super strategist, I guess, Padme, and is really great with a blaster. Where did she learn how to do all this stuff on a peaceful planet like Naboo? That's
a really good question.
She's climbing walls and killing battle droids and whatever.
Oh my God, we've basically missed this whole thing. So this is probably my favorite part of the movie, and that's Duel of the Fates. People are already bashing the lightsaber battles in the prequel trilogy and saying that they're too flowery, there's too much flipping around, they're too choreographed. I think it's a different style of doing stuff. I like the lightsaber battles.
They're fun.
I think they're some of the better things in the prequel trilogy.
Well, it's like we were talking about when you go back to the original trilogy and you watch that first battle between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan, and you're just oh, they just kind of tapped their lightsabers together a couple times.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, as the original trilogy moves on,
it gets better.
It gets better, and the lightsaber battles become more emotional and more brutal, and it's more about just beating the shit out of each other, basically. Right. Don't feel very choreographed at all. And in The Force Awakens, they've gone back to that. The lightsaber battles in The Force Awakens don't feel very choreographed. They feel very emotional, very raw.
Well, I think that would also have to do with the characters and their inexperience.
I agree. I think that's part of it too. But a lot of people are kind of looking at that and saying, yeah, that's what we want. Fuck the prequels. Fuck the lightsaber battles in the prequels. And to me, it's no. The prequels are terrible movies, but if they get anything right, it's the lightsaber battles, right? Because they're cool.
I think they're cool.
They're well staged and they're well choreographed and they're fancy. They're cinematic. To me, that's real cinema. They're shot in these wide angles so that you can see all of the action going on, and they look great.
They're over the top for sure, but they're fun. So
yes,
it took a lot of effort to make them, obviously. So I appreciate it when people put effort into things. What were some of the other things I wanted to say? The whole reason she goes back to Naboo and everything anyways, she's told that the Senate has no proof that the Trade Federation has infiltrated Naboo.
That was the reason initially that they weren't going to, act on the invasion.
And that's why she has to, vote for no confidence against the Chancellor.
Right.
which apparently is super easy.
I guess it's
just
super
overturn
easy.
chancellors
You
pretty
can just be a
fast.
14-year-old queen from some peaceful planet who shows up and says, I don't think this guy's doing a good job. And everyone's like, yeah, all
Yeah,
right.
you're right.
Yeah. And I guess that's the easy part, because Palpatine comes in the next scene and he's just like, I didn't expect it, but I think it's a happy instance nonetheless. I was nominated to become the
me.
chancellor. It's me.
Well, and I
So-
mean, we can assume he swayed people or whatever, but
I feel like the easy part would be, removing the current leader, and the hard part would be getting yourself nominated out of all of the people in the Senate, right?
and that it would take some time.
And that it might take some time, but instead they show us the process of them removing the one person and just have him walk in and be like, they nominated me. How
It's
about
me,
that?
well, lucky day. But the whole thing is like that. There's no proof that the Trade Federation has
Even now,
has done a blockade on Naboo. And I'm like, what are you talking about? There's no proof. Nobody has a camera. Like nobody can send pictures. I mean, the Chancellor sent Jedi to go do to like ambassador the
to-
agreement
right,
between them.
to smooth the cogs about.
So, I mean, they knew what was going on. So how do you have no proof? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And even at the end of this movie, I'm like, oh, so, you've captured the Viceroy, but is that enough proof? Because they could get back and say they didn't do it.
Yeah. I want to talk about spoiler culture, because spoiler culture was very different back then. Not that there wasn't some kind of spoiler culture, but here's just an example. Qui-Gon's death was spoiled for me by the soundtrack to this movie, because I received it as a birthday present, and 2 of the tracks refer to Qui-Gon's death and subsequent funeral. And reading the track listing 2 weeks before this movie came out, I was spoiled on a main character's death.
Man,
And I
that's
was
shitty.
like, what the fuck?
Except that you like spoilers, so.
I do now.
What else? So they say that the clue they need to unravel the mystery of the Sith, the Jedi say that, is to go to Naboo to draw out Darth Maul. And I'm like, what mystery? What's the mystery of the Sith?
I don't know. They know how many of them
don't know
are.
what the conflict is.
They know how many of them there are. They just got to find the 2, right?
We've heard this
no
movie
more,
spends
no
so
less.
much time talking about the conflict between the fucking Senate and the Chancellor and the damn Trade Federation that you wind up knowing nothing about the Jedi and the Sith or the balance or the Force or whatever, because they don't talk about it.
What was the point of this movie? Let's think of the ways in which this movie echoes throughout the rest of the series, or at least throughout this particular trilogy. I don't think that there's a lot here. And I think that's, the people that talk about the machete order and recommend the machete order, there's a reason that they cut this movie out, and that's because the only things in this movie are that Anakin meets Obi-Wan, which is something that has to happen in order for, the Obi-Wan Kenobi of A New Hope and the Darth Vader of A New Hope to have known each other. They have to know each other. They have to have met at some point. And this is the first step that Palpatine takes toward power, but it's not the big step. The big step is the one where he steps into the role as emperor. Now he's just graduated from senator to chancellor.
Right.
Those are the only things in this movie that matter. That's it.
Yep. Pretty much. Nothing matters in this movie. What are you talking about? Like, those things really matter? I really needed to see a whole movie to see that happen? To see some political change happen?
I mean, I guess to see Anakin's mother, to see where he came from,
But the thing is
that
that
we know why he falls to the dark side, I guess, in the second one is a little bit marginally important.
We
but
still
even
know
then-
nothing about the Emperor. We still know nothing about him. We know he was a senator on Naboo.
Oh, we never learn anything about
We
him.
never learn anything about him. We get
apparently-
3 movies.
Apparently he has a first name. It's Sheev. And they never say that in the movies.
You never find out why he's evil, why he wants to take over the galaxy. Nothing. They never tell you anything. We get 3 movies and we get nothing. No characterization whatsoever.
I mean, to be fair, they don't give you anything about the Emperor in the original trilogy either. He's just
I know,
like,
but this is backstory.
Yeah, it should.
This
They
is our
should give you
backstory time.
something.
We got
Yeah.
3 movies to find out where he came from, and all we learn is that he was a lower political position and then a lower political position before that, and that's all we know. I love how their whole battle is a diversion to capture the Viceroy so that hopefully the droid army will be confused. Why would a robot army be confused if a leader is captured?
I don't know, as though they don't have like a directive or something. Like they're not programmed to do a certain thing. They're not programmed for victory. And they do the same thing. And to be fair, Avengers does this too. A bunch of movies do this. It's really stupid. They do the whole thing where if you blow up the mothership, all of the aliens/robots just power down immediately. What a dumb trope. What the hell is that about?
I mean, it's a quick way to end your movie, I guess. But like, why would the robots have ranks at all or verbally communicate?
I don't know.
Or anything.
We didn't really talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi because what does he do in this movie?
Nothing.
He doesn't do a damn thing.
Doesn't do anything.
They leave him on a ship for 45 minutes of this movie to do nothing. Why couldn't it have been him? Why couldn't it have been him to go off with Padme and R2 and Jar Jar to find parts for the ship on Tatooine? Why couldn't it have been him to discover Anakin? Why couldn't it have been him from the beginning to say, hey, I found this kid and I want to train him? And then Qui-Gon is the voice of doubt.
I mean, that would deepen the relationship between him and Anakin.
Oh, yeah, where
wouldn't it?
Qui-Gon's like, no, what are you talking about? You're not ready for a Padawan. You're a Padawan still yourself. You can't do this. And Obi-Wan's like, I feel it. He's the one. He's got to be the one. Whatever. If you want to do the stupid balance of the Force thing, make it Obi-Wan. Make it Obi-Wan that comes to Anakin's, that has Anakin's back, that says, we need to take this kid back because there's something here. Instead of making it Qui-Gon and just having Anakin get dumped on Obi-Wan.
Right.
I mean, there's so much potential for character building there that when, Qui-Gon dies and it's really up to Obi-Wan to take care of Anakin and train him, that he wasn't ready for it. That he really wasn't ready for it. And it's probably Obi-Wan's fault in some part that Anakin fell to the dark side because he wasn't properly trained, because he was trained by someone who was too young to be training him. Right?
Yep. Well, that makes sense.
I mean, that's all stuff that could be touched on, but is never touched on.
Well, you'd have to think about, plotting in advance, characterization.
I mean, we could do an entire podcast on ways the original trilogy could have been improved, and you could just take ideas that are in the prequels.
That are already there.
Not the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, that are already there, that went nowhere.
Yep.
Or went the totally wrong
south.
direction. Yeah, or went south.
And then the ending of the movie, right? Like it's a Gungan Naboo peace ceremony. And
where
it's like,
he holds up one of the things that they use to kill the... I mean, when we win wars, do we have our leaders hold up missiles and say...
all the time. I mean, were they... Like, I know they weren't super buddy-buddy before, but were they at war? Like, do we really need a peace ceremony? I guess we needed a ceremony for something, and nothing else happened in this fucking movie.
The whole characterization behind Boss Nass and the Gungans being at odds with the Nubians was that he thought that the Nubians thought they were better.
Aren't they also Nubians if they also live on Naboo?
You would think so, right? Yeah. But for the sake of argument, no. So the Gungans versus the Nubians, not Nabooians, he thought that the Nubians thought they were better than the Gungans.
Right, yeah, I got that.
And when they kneeled before him, he was like, "Yousa no thinking yousa better than wesa." Oh God.
And then there's peace.
And that's it. It's
and
just
then
like,
they'll
oh,
die
wait.
in droves for them.
You guys don't think you're better than us? Cool, we'll die for you. Oh, okay.
Okie doke. Yeah, whatever. So the movie's over. Thank God.
That was that's a hard 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Any last thoughts before we?
I had so
happily...
many. Oh my God, I had so many notes. I had so many notes I didn't even touch on. We argued about science fiction versus fantasy for so long. We talked about so many things. I mean, I think we went to good places. I think we talked about good things. But yeah, I had a lot of stuff that I wanted to touch on. But that's fine. Maybe we can talk about it next week because God knows we're going to need some help.
speaking of next week, that's it for Popcorn Poops today. Don't forget to stop by our website at popcornpoops.com. Follow us on Twitter at Popcorn Poops or individually. I'm at Jesse Casper.
I'm at Dusty Cram Cram.
Like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher, and if you want to donate to the show, then do so by checking out the GoFundMe page on our website. You can also sign up for a free audiobook at audibletrial.com/popcornpoops.
Yeah, you'll get a membership, free 30-day membership, and you'll get an audiobook for free that's yours to keep forever.
Every week we feature a friend of the podcast. This is our Poo Pal.
That's right, our weekly Poo Pal.
And this week's Poo Pal is the As You Watch podcast. So stick around after the show for a few words from them. And if you want to be a Poo Pal, you can be a Poo Pal too. Just get in touch with us through our website or through social media. And you don't have to be a podcaster to be a Poo Pal.
No, if you're a webcomic artist.
You just have to be awesome.
Yeah, podcasters, webcomic artist, YouTuber, any kind of internet content, web content creator. If you're interested in becoming a Poo Pal and getting shout outs on our podcast and social media and whatnot, you can reach out to us through social media or by emailing us at thepopcornpoops@gmail.com.
So, Dustin, what's going to wrap up our shitty Star Wars month?
The shittiest Star Wars of them all.
What's our Christmas present?
Next week, we are going to be jumping into the infamous 1978 film by director Steve Binder. Can you even call it a film? Made-for-TV film. The Star Wars Holiday Special.
I mean, everybody knew we were going to do it, right?
I think so.
Like, it was the obvious choice.
Yeah, I mean, when you do a shitty Star Wars month around Christmas time,
like, you have to.
You gotta do it.
I've never seen it before, so I'm totally excited.
I have a long time ago, and I'm worried that we're not going to be able to find enough to say about it. So maybe that'll be a chance for us to talk about just Star Wars in general, and we'll see what happens. We might have some other surprises in store for you next week, so tune in and we'll see what happens.
All right, so that's going to be it for this week.
Until next time, take care.
Bye-bye.
We are the Popcorn Poops.
Hello, everybody. On behalf of Nick, Joe, and Vern, we would like to invite you back for a brand new season of the As You Watch podcast.
On our upcoming season, we will be talking about franchises, trilogies, and series of movies that you will recognize and some that you may not.
We will also continue to post fun and insightful interviews with many people in the world of entertainment, as well as feature a lot of great guests from other sites and podcasts.
So be sure to check us out on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Podomatic, and on Facebook.
And don't forget to check out our older episodes on our site, asyouwatch.wordpress.com.